Good evening. I'll call to order this March 18th, 2023 Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission special meeting to order.
I can't hear you.
Oh, we did not mute.
No, you did on mute. No. Oh,
Hear me now?
Wanna try again?
Good evening. Can you hear me now?
No. Coming through the meeting.
Dan, are you online? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
This is what I hear.
Dan, if you can't hear me at some point, just chime in, okay, or text me.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you. All right, we'll dive right into our public hearing, zoning regulation amendment application of 441 Post Road LLC, doing section 10.4, the zoning regulation, design residence district, new section 10.4, sub 3, to allow hotel and resident use and residential density of 40 units per acre. Parts of the 6 acres, 250 feet of frontage on the Post Road abutting the tidal wetland, along with other ancillary design requirements. Working on Post Road special permit, section 24.25, and site plan application. 441 Post Road LLC for temporary mixed-use hotel and residential development, 9 residents district. So we left off with public comments. I don't see Tony Green, which is fine. So, not that he's not, yeah. We'll leave it be at that. Let's dive into public comments, keep going with members of the public who are here in person that wish to be heard on these applications. Is there any member of the public in person that wish to be heard on this application? Come on up, sir. We're gonna try, as I've been saying, to keep public comment to about 3 minutes. So there's a timer, which maybe I'll hold off on for now. Anything that's in writing, please feel free to submit. That's longer than 3 minutes. So if you have anything longer than a one page typed presentation is likely going to be longer. So please submit that to the record. We read it. We always read and hit some highlights here. But if you can just give your name and address and off you go.
Absolutely. Name is Paulo Barros. I live at 370 Vera Street. It's down the road here. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time. I'll keep this very brief. I'm a Fairfield resident and a parent at Sherman Elementary School. I recognize that budgets and mill rates increase annually, and it's crucial to explore new revenue sources for our town. That's why I strongly support the proposed development of 441 Post Road. It offers the potential for much needed tax revenue, job creation, and improved aesthetics to that area. I see it as an exciting opportunity for our community and look forward to its realization. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member of the public in person? Like I said, yeah. If you speaking before?
I did.
Okay.
It's just a follow-up to that.
Okay, if it can be brief then, because I want other people to have a chance and again, anything you need that, any further submissions, please submit, would be great.
Okay, all right. 2 weeks ago, I did have the opportunity to address this commission with concerns about the integrity of the developers who presented a plan with quaint New England style architecture with an appealing facade and shutters. Plans changed to a less appealing facade with less expensive materials, a sort of a bait and switch sales approach. I also questioned why the commission begrudgingly approved 46 unit apartment complex with concern about the commissioners being coerced into approving this 250 unit apartment complex. You know, last Tuesday, Joel Green, did all the presentations with all this. I mean, and really, there are a lot of issues that, valid issues that they presented. The traffic, the fire professional testified on the limitations, the engineering consultant on the shortcomings of the stormwater filtration and retention. And the environmental consultant, foresees significant nitrogen pollution, which is toxic to the tidal marshlands. Those are all very valid reasons to deny this. There's been overwhelming concern expressed over the scale of this development and the negative impact it would have on our community. So I ask again, if the commissioners are being coerced into approving this project. These commissioners, and this is to everybody in here, they all, and I've learned this in the last couple of weeks. These commissioners are members of our community who were elected by the people of this community to be their voice for such decisions. They volunteer their time and expertise to make the town of Fairfield a better place to live. They are to be commended for their efforts. However, it appears that they are being coerced by the developers. They have put the commissioners in a position to have to choose between the lesser of two evils, as the developers have filed two applications for approval. The one that has been discussed in length over the past month, and one filed under 830G. The developer's own words from the frequently asked questions, the property owner, they were asked, why have two different applications been filed for this site? Property owners have filed an application for a mixed-use diner, hotel, and residential development in addition to an application for an 830G affordable housing development. These two applications have been filed as alternative options for future development at this site. Ownership's preference for this site is to proceed with the mixed-use development. And in that vein, they very much hope that the project is approved. However, given the pending 830G affordable housing moratorium in Fairfield and the uncertainty as to whether the mixed-use proposal will be approved, the property owners had to preserve their rights by filing the 830G application as a backup plan. In the event the mixed-use application is not approved or an appeal is taken for approval. This 830, it took me a long time to find it, but I did finally find it. The 830G development will be a 6 to 7 story multifamily residential development, which will consist of 478 units. This structural parking facility will provide a total of 680 parking spaces, assuming those are all going to have cars in them. And it will require the removal of the existing Circle Diner and the existing motel. None of that's there. It's just one gigantic dense residential facility, okay, with the integrity of the developers already in question. And this 830G application, so let me go back. This is the hammer. I'm saying this is the hammer of Oregon. But the issues already being identified with current application, the additional density of this 830G application would be catastrophic to the community. So with the integrity of the developers already in question, and this 830 application having been filed on February 6th, after the developers presented their first proposal with the quaint New England architecture to homeowners in the community and to the Affordable Housing Committee, they must have determined that there would be resistance from the community. And so filed this backup plan. Again, this hammer of coercion. In my mind, they're not responsible developers, but rather predators. They have put the town of Fairfield and its citizens in a difficult position. Do they deserve to be developers in our community? Why not partner with them? If they had an ounce of decency in them, they would withdraw this application and the 830G and come back to this commission with a reasonable plan, reducing the size with the improvements to the stormwater filtration to protect the tidal wetlands. Actual development should wait until after the traffic improvements in the circle are completed because it'll make it massive.
Ma'am, if there's anything else, if you could submit it to the record, because I think anything you have further, can you please submit to the record?
Yeah,
just so
I
we
just have
can?
just one last statement. It's just that integrity is doing the right thing, even when no one is looking.
Thank you. Any other member of the public? No, I know, Joel. Come on up.
Once again, for the record, Joel Grade. The only reason I'm jumping forward. Respect.
No, come on, that's fine.
Comment, but I have a consultant who with State 07, and I can just put.
Yeah, what I don't want to do is, there are some things that you said that you didn't get the answers to, and I don't fully know if that's been fully answered or not. What I don't want is, because they've submitted potential rebuttal evidence, I don't want like another full presentation
No.
to rebut their rebuttal and then have them come back and do it twice, so to speak. So if you can keep if you have something brief or, that
Very
would,
great.
that'd be great.
And
No, I assumed as much, yes. So let me just say, while Ms. Attorney Green is speaking, if there's any member of the public joining us remotely, if you can please sign up in the chat, that will be our sign up chronology, so to speak.
Certain, so Mr. Logan was George, once again, Joel Green, appearing before the commission on behalf of Center Neighbors for Responsible Development. Mr. Logan, as you may recall, here the last session of the commission last week, there was some missing information that has become available to him this week. So some of his comments do address
That'd be
the
great.
responses by the applicant. While he's speaking, I have some documents to give the commission. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Mr. Logan, are you there?
I'm certainly here. Good evening, everyone. George Logan, Rema Ecological Services for the record. I'll be very brief because I have to jump into another meeting. So what has happened since the last time that we were here is that Landtech brought forth a three-page rebuttal of sorts. And so we looked at it and we found out that there was some misrepresentation and maybe clarifications needed to be put forth. So I'm not going to go point by point. All I want to do is to say that we did submit today a point by point explanation, trying to shed some light to some of the things that the so-called refutations by Landtech. And the other thing we did that you'll see in the report that I submitted earlier this afternoon, as you might recall, there was sort of a little bit of a misunderstanding about the invasive plant management plan. They thought that I had reviewed it before I submitted my report, but it was submitted at the last date of the meeting. So we have a few paragraphs just looking at that. Especially my associate Sigrid looked at it carefully. The main point there is that the plan is to be implemented only after the proposed improvements on the site are completed, and that's usually not a good thing because by that time there's exposure of soil, and so that kind of starts bringing in invasives that it can then spread more. Typically what you want to do is you want to do a whole bunch of it before. So just to reiterate a couple of the things, again, in summary, there are still, I think, issues with lack of a robust inventory of the resource. The applicant claims that that has been done. I don't see evidence for that. It's our view that the buffer is still inadequate to protect this resource, especially in a future condition where the extra water, salt water that's becoming into here with the gate project is going to increase and diversify and enhance the habitat. We still believe that the landscaping plan is inadequate, and I was a little surprised that even some of the very nominal recommendations that we made were just rebuffed and set aside. That's not really a professional way of looking at it. They could have included some of these things. And again, the landscaping plan is, in our view, inadequate. I thought that I was going to have my associate here who, unfortunately, apparently she had another conflict herself. So what I want to leave you with is that we're still of the opinion that, as previously stated, both in our report and our oral testimony, that as designed, the proposal is reasonably likely to unreasonably impair the regulated coastal tidal system that's represented obviously by the Brackish tidal marsh, but the mudflats and the tidal creek. At this point, I will just open it up again with any questions that you may have of me. I'm certainly going to be able to respond for the next 10 or 15 minutes if necessary, and then I'll have to jump to my other meeting in the town of Newington.
Questions? Thank you, Mr. Logan.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Attorney Green?
Yes, Next, I would like to call upon Steve Trinkus, who has some responses to provided just before the last meeting again.
Equally brief, I hope.
Yes,
Succinct is a better word.
Yes, can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Yes, yes, Steve Trinkus, professional engineer for the record. I just had a chance to review the Land Tech response to my comments today. And they basically make several arguments that I've misinterpreted the plans. If it's possible for me to share my screen, or if staff could pull up sheet 3 of the plan set that was submitted at the last meeting, that would be helpful. Because I could point out where I have not misinterpreted information. It would be easier if I could share my screen, if that's possible.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Trinkus.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're looking at sheet 3 of the plan set that was submitted at the last meeting. And what I want to highlight is here on the smaller infiltration system, where just below this C in a circle. It says here 6-inch overflow orifice at elevation 13. That's above the top of the gallery system. That was my comment. And, you know, if you look at the bottom of the gallery at 8.4 feet, it's a 3-foot high gallery, 6 inches of stone under it, and a 6-inch top. You know, that brings the elevation up to 12.4. That's lower than 13. So this
Mr.
overflow
Trinkus.
pipe is, you know, basically, 0.6 of a foot, a little over 6 inches higher
Mr.
than the top.
Trinkus.
Yeah.
Steve, if you could you put your cursor so that the commission
Yeah.
can see?
Yeah,
Really?
I have my cursor on it right now.
Okay, so there's a letter C
Larger.
just inside the building envelope.
Yeah.
And it
Right.
points to an
Right.
arrow that next to the detention system. Is that what you're?
Correct. And yes, so if you go to that last line, the 6-inch overflow orifice is called out at elevation 13. The top of the gallery system is 12.4. So this overflow is half a foot above the top of the gallery. And it's quite honestly not shown, on the gallery system itself. You have the inlet pipe coming in from the building, and you have the outlet going to a manhole to the level spreader. The same condition exists on the larger gallery system. Again, the overflow pipe is higher than the top of the Cultec system in this case.
Can you show that, please?
Yeah, I'm zooming in here. So yeah, so this is infiltration practice number 2. And again, the stone elevation is 8.65 and the orifice overflow is 12.7. And if you follow their detail, the top of the stone above the Cultec system is elevation 11.82. So again, 12.7 is almost, just short of a foot higher than the top of the stormwater system. That was my comment. I'm not misinterpreting anything. This is the information on the plan. So in zooming out, I want to just zoom into the test holes. These are the original test pits and the more recent ones done on March 6th by Land Tech. The soil descriptions in every one of these is a silt soil, light brown silt, light brown sand and silt, light brown silt, red brown silt. These are silt soils, which would not be unexpected this close to a tidal environment. In their stormwater report, which I will click to now, this is page 58 of their stormwater report. This is what's called the drawdown analysis. And it uses an infiltration rate of 1.02 inches per hour. And this was taken from table 10.2 of the 24 DEP Stormwater Quality Manual. And going to that table, this is again, table 10.2 from the 24 manual. Yes. The infiltration rate the applicant used is for a sandy loam. You can see right here, silt loam is 0.27 inches. That's basically 25% of the observed of what they used it for. The soil, by their own description, is a silt loam. Therefore, the drawdown analysis they submitted using that rate is invalid because you need to use the rate of 0.27. The other issue with the drawdown analysis is it is not the way that you measure infiltration in a stormwater practice. You model it in a program such as HydroCAD with a 50% of a field observed infiltration rate. The rates in this table point two are from 1982, 40 plus years ago, and these are national averages for soil types. And I will tell you, having dug thousands of test pits, including 2 sites today, the soils are highly variable. These are generalized rates, and even the DEP manual says you can use this for planning, but you still need to do on-site infiltration tests, which the applicant has not performed at this time. Thus, the whole approach that all of this water is going to infiltrate is completely unsupported by factual evidence. The last point is they've claimed they've done a pollutant loading analysis. My professional opinion as an expert in low impact development, it is not, because they're not actually calculating the loads of the various pollutants, total suspended solids, nutrients, nitrogen and phosphorus, metals and hydrocarbons, and evaluating how those loads are actually going to get reduced. This is a overly simplistic approach. They're also adding the values together, which you cannot do because as the water gets cleaner, it gets much harder to remove the pollutants. So I stick to my professional opinion from the last meeting. There will be increased pollutant loads discharged to the tidal wetland systems, but I did not misinterpret anything on these plans. I have done this for 40 plus years. I know how to read a plan set. And, you know, when you have an overflow pipe that's above the top of the gallery, there's something wrong. Thank you.
Commissioner Porcello?
I have a question not for the consultants, but for our staff. There are a number of issues that have been raised by the applicant's consultants and the and Attorney Green's consultants, where there just seems to be continued back and forth. Both parties insisting that their interpretation or analysis is correct and disagreeing with the other side. And it's difficult for us as commissioners to resolve these when we are not professionals in these particular areas. So we get our staff to weigh in on some of the factual information here. For example, does the stormwater management system comply with meet the 2024 deep quality water quality manual?
Yes.
Yeah, that's gonna be huge for us, and we'll do that after our hearing. Gonna need to.
Are we asking for the town engineer to weigh in?
Yes.
Yes.
Questions for Mr. Trinkus?
I have a question about silt versus sandy loam. Could you just explain the difference between those two and which one is better for the drainage system?
I'd be happy to. Steve Trinkus for the record again. Sandy loam is a organic soil with a high concentration of sand particles. Sand itself is very gritty. It's irregularly shaped. So there's a lot of void space in a sandy loam in the soil. As there's more void space, there's more conduits for water to be infiltrated because there's all this open space between the soil particles. Silt loam, on the other hand, are much finer soil particles. The soil is actually fairly sticky. If you were to take a handful of the sandy loam and put it in your hand and squeeze it, it would not stay together. It would basically fall apart. If you took silt loam and put it in your hand and squeezed it, it would stay together because the finer particles are stickier and there's less void space between them. So it simply does not transmit the same amount of water. And you can see that in that table 2 from the manual, the difference between a sandy loam at 1.2 inches per hour and a silt loam of 0.27. You know, that's basically a quarter of it because it just, the water is actually held between the soil particles by capillary action and it doesn't freely drain, where in a sandy loam, it is freely draining.
And the goal is to have it drain faster.
If you're claiming
slower, I'm sorry.
infiltration, yeah, a sandy loam soil would be better for infiltration than a silt loam. You would need more storage volume if you're in a silt loam because it's going to drain much slower.
Mr. Trinkus, isn't it your position fundamentally that either way, the modeling that was done for the efficacy of the stormwater treatment is flawed because they use basically the wrong material in which those galleries sit?
Yes, that is my professional opinion.
Thank you.
Any further questions from Mr. Trinkus?
I have one more question.
Okay.
It has to do with, the two ecologists have pointed out that a larger buffer would be good for ecological reasons. The report that's in public letters, scan number 8, which I found is called One Nature. They did it. They, I guess, were retained by, there must be a consultant for Ash Creek Conservation Association. They wrote a report saying, they didn't say we have to do it, but they said 100-foot vegetative buffer would be good. And that is kind of backed up by Mr. Logan in his March 18th report, where he writes, based on science, and he's actually referring to a wetland and watercourse buffer.
Commissioner Braun, what's the question? Is it the question?
He's
that-
recommending 98 to
What's the question,
164.
Mr. Trinkus?
My question for Mr. Trinkus is there's also an engineering or a low impact stormwater system reason also to have a larger buffer of natural land, the engineered systems and tidal, wherever it discharges, tidal wetland.
If Steve Trinks for the record, if the runoff was not being concentrated by the, catch basin system and directed to these underground galleries, but were utilizing low impact development approaches such as overland flow, letting the water sheet off, then yes, a larger buffer to allow the water to sheet through vegetation before getting to the tidal resource, it would be a benefit. In this particular case, as all the stormwater is collected by a conventional system directed to these 2 underground systems, the buffer does not have an effect on the stormwater because the stormwater is not being directed onto the buffer.
Any other questions for Mr. Trinkus? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. So next, in deference and pursuant to the chair's request at our last meeting, I had Jim Buveris do a letter, which I've submitted to the commission, and I just want to comment on the following. The first thing, and I had a discussion with him, is an F is not an F. An F is not categorizing one condition. And I'm reminded of being in school. An F could run from, I guess, 60 down to 0, basically, on an exam. But the point is, there is no floor with an F. F is a threshold in which a system doesn't function, and it is categorized as a level F service. But in terms of the delay, intersection delay, there's no ceiling on it, meaning.
No, I think that's come through pretty clear, I think.
I know, but the applicant keeps insisting in materials that an F is basically an F, and we just strenuously disagree with that.
I mean, it's looking at the same side, two different sides of the same coin, but I think the point's been made.
All right, thank you. And again, Mr. Buveris indicates that the poor level of service does create a safety concern in terms of egress from the site. And he also points out that it is not simply an hour during which the M situation exists on the site. So we just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention.
Thank you.
On the fire safety issue and the access issue, it's based on the report I've received, and I'm aware that Mr. Versteeg is here tonight. The point of our discussion was not a matter of code compliance. We did certainly talk about the access roads and the secondary access on the back of the site. We did talk about sort of the width of it. We talked about the composition of it. And certainly we talked about permeability of it. But the significance of that is not to get into an argument about code compliance, but the point of that argument was to get into a best practices discussion. And what we're asking the commission to do, and what my clients are asking the commission to do, is as Fairfield really transitions, and we see it every day on Route 1, what we're asking this commission to do is to get sort of proactive on some of these fire safety issues. Mr. Fino indicated that some of these aerial access issues and components are presently under consideration. And so we have provided the commission with some sections of the International Fire Code, including specifically Appendix D. And in my discussions with Mr. Fino today, it was his recommendation that the commission focus on sections 104, 105, and 106. And that they really address these issues pertaining to these large developments that we're starting to see, these large residential developments. And really, there should be, if the commission were to ever consider these kinds of regulations that open the way for this intensity of development, this is a component that we would ask the commission to consider. So we're offering this document for the commission's consideration and thought as you focus on that.
Thank you.
Next, I wanted to just highlight the text amendments that the applicant has proposed. I provided the commission with a copy of the text amendment, and I don't feel that the applicant really did it justice in addressing the commission on what is truly being proposed. And first and foremost, if you look at the text amendment, and they're proposing this paragraph 3 to section 10.4, first and foremost, and based upon the responses by the applicant to the questions that I posed last week, this is classically spot zoning. This text amendment can only and does only apply to one property or that. And the applicant conceded that in their responses, because there is no other property at present that offers these features that are set forth in the preface to paragraph 3. So,
Mr. Chairman, can I just a point of information? Knowing the commission's schedule, I more understand rebuttal. It seems to me this is repetitive to what's previously been a part of this record by the opposition in terms of reviewing the text amendment and their comments with regard to that. So I'm not trying to interrupt. I apologize if I ran, but I'd like to keep this focused on what it was up to this point, which is rebuttal, I guess I'd call it, and not rehashing.
I haven't covered this.
No, I know, and that's, I guess, partly, I guess maybe the potential problem was we had the opportunity last time and we may not have done that. I don't recall all the details. But let's keep going through it. And again, just, I would ask you to be succinct about it.
Oh, I am. I know it hurts, but it's spot zoning.
That's fine. I mean, that I've got nothing wrong. Yeah, that's a simple one. I mean, if there's anything else you want to go through, then let's just go through it.
All right, and B, the applicant is proposing, well, once again, the 13A, the density is way over the top and really serves the applicant perhaps, and what their wish list is for their development. But I don't we just haven't done that. And as recently as 2 weeks ago, this commission adopted amendments that spoke to increasing density, and it was the first 9,370 feet, as I recall it, with one unit for that, and then after that, it was one unit for every, oh, I have it, I'm gonna say 3,000 feet, as I recall it. And it's difficult for me to imagine that the commission would now, just 2 weeks later, start again, resetting the DRD regulations when, you know, you had the presentation that was from Attorney Rizzio and Attorney Russo, and so it's just incredibly dense. 12% in B. Well, just 2 weeks ago, this commission set a standard of 15%. So why did you then back off on this proposed development? The height is once again problematical, and especially for this particular site because of its the contours of the site, especially at where the site abuts my clients on Shore Village. So the height, really, the building shows is 5 stories there, so the commission should really give that some thought. Setbacks of 15 feet are just to the street, and the commission should bear in mind that that this doesn't include porches and decks, which can protrude rather much closer to the street. We did show the commission at the last meeting the power lines and utilities, and in the applicant's drawings, they really didn't provide the commission with a drawing that really illustrates what this would really look like relative to the actual field conditions. The applicant did confirm that they would not be, for example, burying utility lines. So presumably, it's just difficult to conceive without that information. For off-street parking and loading, interestingly, the applicant comes forward with a plan that shows 1.5, bear with me, 1.5 spaces per unit, and yet hidden in this regulation is a regulation that says that the residential parking requirement shall be reduced to the lesser of 1 parking space per bedroom, or 1 1.5 parking spaces per household. And yet in the parking schedule, and I provided you with a copy, the applicant purported to provide 375 spaces at 1.5, and yet there's this out, and sort of in this regulation, there is a way for the applicant to potentially come back with a lower parking ratio of 1 space per unit, which Mr. Viveras testified, our expert testified that is insufficient. There is also a change that the applicant didn't highlight rather in I Roman numeral 3. And I urge the commission to take a look at section 28.6.11, because what the applicant does here is kind of subtle, is the hotel parking requirement shall be 1 for each sleeping room, or shall per 28.6.11 if the site contains a hotel and restaurant use. And what that enables the commission to do is take 75% of the requirement. For example, if you had a 100-room hotel and a restaurant that required 100 spaces, say a restaurant with 4,000 foot floor area, so that 100 spaces are required under the regulation, and the hotel is 1 space per room. So in theory, you'd say, well, you need 200 spaces for those uses. 28.6.11 says that where you have both of those features in a building, not on the site, you can reduce those requirements by 75%. So be careful, because this says if the site contains a hotel and restaurant use. And interestingly, the applicant and the responses to the questions I asked has not yet determined what all that space in the hotel and the ground floor of the hotel is going to be used for. And I asked specifically, is it going to be a restaurant? Is it going to be a bar? And the response was not yet determined. And that's obviously troubling because, you know, we're having this robust discussion about traffic. And if that entire space is to be a bar or a club or a restaurant, obviously, I think that changes the consideration of this commission. So what we've done is at the commission's the chair's request, we did provide some sort of thoughts on regulation amendments. And I would just like to go through, by no means, these are really conceptual. And
Where are you?
it's probably a
Same.
document after that. It says 441 Post Road, circle neighbors for responsible development.
That's the
Yeah.
same document. Oh, it's a different document completely. No. Okay, sorry, thank you.
Okay. So here are the sort of ideas that we want to get to sort of present and have the commission consider. First of all, access is important, and while the DRD regulation already speaks to this vehicular access from major collector roads, we really want to emphasize that under no circumstances would what I'll call local streets, and certainly my clients are concerned that at some point the applicant would acquire a property on Shore and Village Drive and try to create access through their neighborhood to this development. So that's the reason that access is upfront, just to as sort of an explanation point on that. Setbacks. We have no problem with 15 feet from the street line, and I know that the commission has discussed objectives on sort of setback from streets. On side yard setbacks, and it can be 15 feet, but if you're bordering a residential zone, there are areas of our regulations that already provide a greater buffer. I know that in some of the design residence, section 12 of the regulations, it sets forth a number for setback or the setback required in the adjacent residential neighborhood. And that's obviously to avoid what this proposed project is really the poster child for, and that is putting a gigantically, massively tall building at the top of an extreme slope that towers above properties on Shore and Village Drive and is just 30 feet off the property line. And the idea of this side yard and rear yard setbacks are to create some reasonable buffer between residential neighborhoods and commercial developments of this kind. Although once again, this development only pertains to one site, and Shore and Village Drive is sort of the ground zero neighborhood impacted from sort of the setback issue, although based on the number of people you've heard from during this public hearing, there's a cause because of traffic and safety. There's a lot of concern in the region. So that's the side and rear setback. So we would propose that where you are bordering a residential zone, the setback goes to 50 feet if you are considering developments of this intensity and height, and that there be a significant planted buffer. And once again, the regulations in other sections do deal with the idea of having buffers in those sorts of areas. Similarly, in deference to some of the comments that the commission received, we think that there should be a robust setback from tidal wetlands, and that there should be a landscape buffer to avoid the sort of impacts that Mr. Logan spoke about on flora and fauna.
Let me ask this, for these regulation amendments, are they, as we say, within the footprint of what's being proposed?
They are not.
Okay, so this would by all accounts, reopen the hearing if we had to. If, for example, we decided, because I would have thought you would have said yes. If we decided the tidal wetlands should be 75 feet instead of what's proposed. Thank you. You think we'd have to reopen the hearing in order to make that amendment?
Well, first of all, we're offering these conceptually.
Yeah.
And secondly, I think you'd have to deny the application.
You think it'd deny the application outright, not rewrite it ourselves and make it more constrained?
Well, you could, in theory. Well, they're more restrictive, so I
Yeah.
guess in theory, you could reopen the hearing.
Well, I don't think I would need to if they're more restrictive.
They're more restrictive.
Yeah, that's the sense I'm getting too.
Right.
All right, and I mean, in looking at these, I think I would hit some major topics if
Sure.
you need to.
That's fine.
We don't need to go through 4 stories. I get that, the height, I get that.
You can see the step back in the,
Step back's a good one, go through that if you want.
just for the benefit of the public.
No, go through that one, that's a good one.
I'll go quick.
I've got a question for Pete.
Let's let him go through it
Okay.
and we'll hold at the end, please. Thank you.
We speak of a step back, after 3 exposed stories, that it steps back 10 feet. We don't think that a step back is necessary from the post road, for example. It would certainly create, once again, a less imposing situation on residential neighborhoods that should be a step back on those sides. We talked about building coverage, floor area ratio. We would propose 20 units per acre as a density. You are going to put a development of this kind abutting a residential zone. Hotel is, it's fine, it would be 110, but as my client pointed out, there's a blur with people who now occupy hotels on long-term bases. They essentially treat them like apartments. I think a specific requirement would be that they're not used for cooking or for kitchens. They don't become street dwelling units and what they're truly hotels. Stormwater refers to, once again, low impact development strategies, the 100-year storm. Once again, in deference to the comments, recognizing the comments that there should be windows that are using bird safe glass and don't encourage bird strikes. Events venue, this is once again the mystery of that open space and sort of the way that the design is done. That there aren't events conducted on site, large scale events that would exacerbate an already unworkable traffic situation. 15% is out of respect for the regulations that were just adopted by this commission. And everyone seems to be recognizing the need for affordable housing. So we would suggest that what's good on Wilson Road is good on the Post Road in terms of affordability. Thought, as we are considering these large developments and the applicant even concedes, and we think that this is really not true, but the applicant is suggesting that based on the ratio of certain ratios that they come up with, that 40 school-age kids might live in this development. We truly believe that there will be a lot more. We are a town of neighborhoods. Why aren't we having or requiring some sort of amenities on the site? If you're going to have a development that's not age restricted and admittedly, it's going to have kids living there. There's no outdoor facilities at all. It's got commercial development. It's got a diner. It's got a hotel. Certainly, applicants should be encouraged to make these spaces livable for their residents and having some outdoor space for kids to play, as we all like to have in our neighborhoods. It's a thought.
Something other than the pool.
Something other than, which, as we know in Connecticut, is a 4-season project, right? And between other months of the year, or sorry,
I know
4
what you
months,
meant.
4
I know what you
months.
meant, yeah.
Sorry.
Okay.
So that's our,
Commissioner Randolph had a question on height, which is fair.
A question, some staff, looking at the ordinance, what's it? How do we measure height? The average height from the average grade to the roof deck. Average grade of 4 corners. Well, no, it's the complete perimeter. Okay, thank you.
And you should bear in mind that the applicant is also asking for another 5 feet to hide mechanicals on the roof. Arching deck.
Would it be possible to get a comparison? I guess that would be on us to do, right? A comparison of what has been requested.
I'll forward it in Word format tomorrow to staff.
Well, no, I think his question is comparing what the application is versus what this is. They ask for, I forget offhand, let's just say they ask for 50 feet, you're saying 40 feet, for example.
Side yards are 30 as it's proposed.
I mean, I think it's gonna be up to us, so to speak,
Yeah,
which is
okay.
fine. Unless somebody has it, but let's just, okay, let's just, I think it's on us, I think, which is fine.
All ahead.
Okay, next. There's an analysis of their, I think I sort of a better vision of the CAM report. This is an analysis of the lack of compliance with the Coastal Area Management Act. There is, so basically this memo speaks to compliance with Coastal Area Management Act. And we point out that this is not compliant with coastal resource protection. The applicant is increasing impervious surface, which is counter to the act. There is inadequate stormwater management, as we've highlighted, especially this evening, as Mr. Trink has pointed out. And there are adverse impacts, potential adverse impacts on tidal wetlands. There is an error, and on page 2, paragraph 1, replacement of water dependent uses. It says presently the development replaces existing water dependent uses with non-water dependent uses, and that should really be the development proposes non-water dependent uses. And it doesn't replace a water dependent use. I apologize for that error.
Say that one more time, the development proposes,
The development proposes non-water dependent uses.
thank you.
And the act prioritizes water dependent uses. And what I'm getting at is just having a walkway for the public to get to the water is not a water dependent use. There's no dock there, there's no kayak access, there's no fishing access, there's none of those features that the act encourages. So it really doesn't meet that objective, and we get into that in that paragraph. So what it says, no water dependent use provided. And we refer once again to boat landings, kayak launches, fishing piers, and water dependent recreational and business uses. The applicant does not fully address floodplain management requirements. And there is, and this really, I urge staff to look at this. It appears that the applicant refers to the site as 6.4 acres, 6.36 or 6.39 acres, because that is the zoning definition that excludes certain features on the site. So the site is 8+ acres, but it's referred to as 6 for a lot of the zoning discussion. But in reality, there are coastal area management features in an 8-acre area, and some of the features that the applicant is in the table on page 8 of the Land Tech report does not properly address some of the features that are located on the 8-acre site that they're calling 6.4 acre sites. So, so we have that in the memo and footnotes, so you can locate that based on the stock. The next document. Next thing I'd like to address just briefly are the site plans, which we claim are incomplete or defective, and a variety of stuff. At present, the hotel building is shown to have 59,140 square feet. The diner, based on the assessor's record, is 6,333 square feet, with a total of 65,473 feet claimed to be existing after, if the hotel were to be built. 28.7 of the zoning regulations requires loading spaces. One space for uses having a area in excess of 4,000 square feet for uses more than 40,000 square feet, including motels, retail stores, restaurants, and the like. You have to have one space for every 40,000 feet. And in this case, there's going to be more than 40,000 feet. I was unable to locate two compliant loading spaces in the site. Section, looking at drawing C 1.0 shade trees. Under your regulations, they're required to be equally distributed throughout the parking area. They are not. Your regulations specifically require that in submitting site plan drawings. The regulations specifically require, this was interesting because I had a discussion with Mr. Kelly this week, and then we've been trying to show how dramatically this building towers over his home. The building is just, as you know, 30 feet from the property line. And once again, there's a dramatic slope to the, I'm going to call the east of the building, adjacent to Mr. Kelly's property. And we were trying to figure out the massive difference between his backyard and the top of the structure. And that led me to thinking that there was something missing from the drawing, and that is that your regulations specifically require that site plans and existing conditions drawings show contour lines that extend 50 feet off the site. That is 25.2.2.2, which requires existing contour lines on the premises and proposed contour lines resulting from the proposed use, including an area within 50 feet of the premises shown on a map drawn to scale. That's into the scale. That was not done, so that this commission can't really, based on that, that analysis cannot be done based on the record that's for the commission, and that's missing. You talked about the credit on hotels, and I gave you the parking grid. And once again, right at the moment, the applicant did this thing where they combined, they took credit for the diner, and they claimed that the hotel, one key or one parking space per hotel key is 110. The diner requires 94 spaces. And what they did is they did a mixed use reduction of 25%. So instead of having 94 places, they took the 25% reduction and they're providing 153 spaces, even though at present the regulation says that it's in the building, in the same building. Obviously, the applicant is looking for a text amendment. They're looking for a text amendment that refers to the site. I would again urge the commission not to do that, particularly when you don't know what's happening with what I'll call the mystery space of the town. None of us know what that's going to be. All right, some comments.
Closing comments?
Yeah, we're getting there. It's like once again, and I can't say it enough, the reason you have all these folks out here is because the buildings, it's got a tower over Shoreham Village Drive. And this is still Fairfield. This is a community of neighborhoods, and we've seen this neighborhood come out. They are, this is frightening. It's interesting to me, and when we heard on the 2179, 2199, in 29 Fairfield Place application, counsel for the applicant, pulled out the McLaughlin case. And it's in the record in that case, I suppose I'll incorporate it by record. I didn't want to put that in, but basically that, council spoke to the need to have experts on some of the findings that this commission has to make that are commonly known. And the need for expert testimony for special permit applications. And one of the things that the applicant failed to do, and while they showed, kind of shiny things here and these beautiful drawings and spoke glowingly of their development, is they didn't get very deep into the details, but certainly they ignored some of the standards for special permits, such as impacts on property value. There's nothing on the record on impacts on property values in which this commission can make that comment. And once again, you can see how close to that neighborhood the development is. Letters from the Affordable Housing Task Force. I have huge respect for the Affordable Housing Task Force, and they're doing, well, Affordable Housing Committee. They're doing a lot of good work, and they've promoted some great projects. I've never seen them give a negative recommendation on a project that incorporates an affordable community. Similarly, the Economic Development Commission, I think one project they gave a negative recommendation to in 30 years. And I didn't have time this week to look at that, but on a development a couple of years back, I went back through their minutes for at least a decade, and there was never a negative recommendation on a project. So I appreciate, interestingly, they have this petition in the record, and I'm sure they're going to talk about, the applicant's going to talk about it on rebuttal. You haven't heard anyone say that they don't want to see this site redeveloped. Everyone wants to see improvement in our town. Everyone wants to see a nice hotel. Everyone wants to see redevelopment and responsible development and attractive development, and it's an asset. But what you heard are concerns that fall within the jurisdiction of the commission. So yeah, we all love the idea of economic development. Everyone loves raising the tax base. I'm not sure everyone loves raising the tax base in their neighborhood, but everyone loves it in Fairfield. And no one, once again, they went to all these businesses and probably said, do you want to see the Circle Hotel redone and a new hotel built? Who's going to say no to that? Who's going to say no to that? So what does that do for the commission? We had a discussion about going to those businesses and saying, you want to see it redeveloped in a way so that traffic can't get off the site at peak hours for 90 seconds. You want to see a site that towers over a neighborhood. I'm sure you'd get a different result on that petition. So petitions can be kind of tricky. And the application is kind of gimmicky because once again, there were all these kind of pretty drawings, but once again, not a lot of substance. Again, I can't help but comment on the fact that the restaurant bar is not accounted for and not yet determined. It's difficult for me to conceive that the applicant can claim this well thought out, responsible development and can talk about the affordability of their development and not know yet whether they're putting a restaurant bar on the site. And obviously, that's just going to increase the traffic on the site. And we don't know whether it's, once again, as we discussed on Post Road in Fairfield Place, we don't know whether it's going to be what it is. Is it going to be a breakfast place? Is it going to be a Chips? Is it going to be a high volume place that in the morning draws a big breakfast crowd so that 90 seconds balloons to in a minute to 2 minutes or 2.5 minutes? We don't know. But before you start granting text amendments and granting applications, the applicant should really come forward with that information. You have choices here. And I've heard this commission say so many times, and I know it's hard for you to say to so many neighborhoods, look, right now we're confronted, we need affordable housing. We have an 8-30G application. There are strict legal standards and we can't do it. But this application presents an opportunity for good planning. And good planning is not necessarily what this developer and this applicant needs. Good planning is planning that benefits the whole community. And And that raises the bar for everyone, not just for one property owner. This 8-30G applicant, I know we've had a philosophical argument about whether this commission should consider the fact that there is an application out there for 8-30G. We disagree on that because I think this application rises and falls on its own merits. I know we won't run through that again.
don't need
I
to.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But you have good traffic data here that shows that with 250 units and a 110 unit hotel and a diner or a restaurant on the site, that the level of service is a bad F. To suggest that this applicant is going to march in now and have 474 units of affordable housing, that traffic situation is only going to worsen. And I have no doubt, and I am fully confident that that development will present a much longer delay at peak hour. 474 units, 67 studios, 284 one-bedroom units, and 123 two-bedroom units. So look, on the one hand, we need affordable housing, but I am not afraid of this, and my clients are not afraid of this.
And that's fair, because the reason I brought up what I did last time was, and I think you understood, was I'm in different roles. I'm sitting in a different position. I'm sitting as legislature now, as legislative, and then I sit as juror later. And I'm not trying to prejudge the merits of the 830G because that's not my goal. It's a different application. It's got different standards. We'll do it. But I'm noting the difficulties that's presented to this commission as to where to go with it, so to speak. Because to your point earlier you made about good planning, even if I were to accept, this commission accepted all your alternatives for the regulations, and it didn't work for the property owner, rightly, wrongly, whatever, I'm not casting any aspersions on it one way or the other, but if it doesn't work for the property owner, how effective is that planning? And then if it's not effective in the sense that the applicant doesn't go down that route and goes to the 830G, now I'm sitting in a juror standpoint. And I'm not saying it's not defensible, the 830G. I think it could very well be. Most, anytime we have applications that are big, they're normally defensible, but we'll see where it goes. So
It's pretty easy to say, we can't afford that development, or we can't do that development, or this is the minimum we can do and get by. But at a certain point, sometimes you have to say to an applicant, this commission, our job is not to give you what you need. Our job is to plan responsibly.
well, not give them what they want, give them plan responsibly.
Right.
No, I get your point. I understand that.
And if, look, they have some great people on their team. And I just think that they did not consider the neighborhood when they came forward with this plan. And once again, going back to where I started this section, you have the discretion. And you can
We
say,
have complete with the text amendments and legislative authority to it. I think you would agree with me, maybe that's a leading question, but in my legislative authority and discretion, considering an alternative 830G could still be considered in that discretion.
sure,
Yeah, fair enough.
sure. Another consideration actually is.
I got you up at 1 hour, so
I'm almost. just-
No, I did like 5 more minutes.
Yeah.
5 more minutes.
You're adding potentially 250 units to the number of dwelling units. And so once again, the goalposts are moving back, and while 220 of them potentially are market rate, sort of the goalposts are moving. So as you sort of going forward, start granting units, that is what we thought, that we're adding a lot of units. The traffic, we are 5 to 10 years away from that circle. And we really got to bear that. I think our traffic consultant made a great point, and that is, this commission should either deny it or step somehow, maybe pass text amendments that allow for some limited development. But we are just, it's a terrible intersection, everybody. Code review comments. I provided you with a copy of the code review comments because I note that there seems to be, I know I sing this song every time on code review. But yet there seems to be, the applicant seems to have taken the position that code review minutes sort of answered some concerns. I just gave you the pages that deal with fire marshal's comments. And by no stretch can it be concluded that the fire marshal blessed this plan. At best, the fire marshal made some recommendations, but to my knowledge, fire marshal has not said this is all great on the plan that is presently before the commission for signing off on.
Yeah, and if we haven't already, I think that's something we're gonna reach out towards the fire marshal as well, Mr. Wendt. We'll reach out to the fire marshal for this.
We'll see how the rest of this goes, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, we sure can.
Commissioner
I
Harrison.
just had a quick question, just for, I would be, for code minutes, code minutes from 4480 Blackbird Turnpike is in this file. So I just want to make sure that right code minutes are represented here.
I saw that, I saw code minutes for another application that was
Okay.
posted here.
We'll address that, because I know the code minutes were in originally.
Well, I note this refers to hotel, apartment buildings.
So these are in there too.
Oh, yeah.
Number 18 is the code enforcement minutes under the application folder.
The top one in the file.
Anything further, Attorney Green?
4480 is also.
Just give me 1 minute.
Are they the back of those?
It's the director.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Just out of curiosity, is any other member of the public wish to be in person? Have you guys spoken previously? Okay,
I have several remote who have not spoken at all.
that's fine.
So just to wrap up, on the special permit, if you get on the special permit, 25.7.7 of the regulations, sets for some of the standards for granting a special permit. And once again, plans have to be, it's 25.7.7, the development shown has to be of such a character as to harmonize with the neighborhood to accomplish a transition in character between areas of unlike character, protect property values in the neighborhood, preserve and enhance the appearance and beauty of the community, and avoid undue traffic. Now, once again, I know in the aggregate, I say, in the collective, the applicant just doesn't begin to prove these findings that it has to make. And again, I would go to Lachlan. And with that, I'll answer any questions the commission has.
I think we're good. Thank you.
And I want to thank the commission for all the courtesy at me during the hearing of the matters. And once again, on behalf of the clients, I urge the commission to deny the application. I will incorporate the comments by Mr. Logan and Mr. Trinkus on the petition to intervene. And just the petitions speaks for itself in terms of impacts on the air, water, and natural resources. Mr. Trinkus did show the commission that the stormwater system will not adequately treat stormwater, especially for suspended solids. And that they will have a weapon. Says Mr. Logan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, why don't you come up? Yeah, sorry. Thank you. Just give your name and address, please.
Certainly, my name is Mylan Wolf. I live at 2325 Burr Street in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm Senior Director of Science and Conservation at the Connecticut Audubon Society. Excuse me. My group has been working extremely hard for the last 10 years to encourage bird-friendly glass in both new construction of commercial and residential. Why? As you might find it surprising, if not alarming, to know that 3 to 900 million birds are killed every year across this country in collision with glass. And this particular project, if approved, will provide a large amount of glass surface adjacent to a regular migratory corridor for migratory birds. So no law right now that have to use bird-friendly glass. But I'd just like to encourage, if this project goes forward, please consider the use of bird-friendly glass. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask him a question?
I mean, what's the question? I mean, I feel like that was
It has
pretty
to do with
simple.
birds.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I've read in some of the Ash Creek material that this is a major area for migratory stopover. Can you explain what that is and if there's any other issues other than the glass? Like, you have 6 stories of windows. We heard somewhere there are 4, like 10 glass, people living in them, like noise and light. And then we have a pool, maybe
Let
60.
him answer the question.
I'm asking the question.
That's easy.
You've asked it.
You also have a pool with perhaps parties and noise. Is that an issue with the migratory birds? The noise and the light?
No, I don't think
Okay.
noise and light is the big issue. A really tall building would have light issues, because we do have a lights out program. Those are for, multi-story buildings, not for lower buildings. As
So
far
this
as
is-
migratory stopover is concerned, that, birds don't fly from Canada to South America in one loop, in one run. They have specific stops they have to make along the way to refuel. This happens to be an important migratory stop for birds.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Briefly, you could explain how bird glass differs from ordinary glass and if you know what the difference is in expense.
I don't know exactly. There's different types of bird friendly glass. The most effective ones have a series of included lines that go down that you can't see from the inside out. Birds can see it from the outside in, included in the glass. So when they approach, they realize this is an opaque surface and not a see-through surface. It is more expensive.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Ma'am, how long do you have? Because I wouldn't mind going to somebody new, unless you're gonna be within a minute, less than a minute.
Can we just do, these remote people have been waiting for.
Yeah, I mean, if you have, I'm seeing,
First, please.
I can see a bunch of copies. I would submit that. I know, but let's go to remote because people have been waiting online and if there's time, we'll come back here.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I had
Is it
people
over?
who wanted to come.
No, they're not over. It's not over. Have you spoken before?
No, I have not.
Okay, go ahead. And then we'll turn, anybody else joining us? Anybody else here in person? Speaking for the first time? I'll go. Yeah.
Wilhelm, I live on Storm Village Drive. And I wanted to consider
Jim, can you help with the
all
microphone,
data
please?
that's collected and
I
all
think
the
the microphone's on.
that. Oh, I'm sorry.
It's not you. I don't think it was on last time.
Just start with you. Thank you. But we originally, these homes are 85 years old. We're in a path of water. And our foundations can be broken. Our old bathrooms, which we have not demolished, have old black and white tiles
That we preserved because we feel that it's part of what the environment of our old neighborhood is. These people don't live here. They will be gone.
And it's a monument to greed. That's all it is. And it's a monstrosity. And all we ask is that our neighborhood be preserved. And that our children could go to school and be safe. You cannot go around that circle right now without totally closing your eyes and being afraid because the people do not observe the yield sign. Now, people coming out of that driveway are not going to wait for us to get around that circle. They don't do it now. You can't go through Riverside because there's construction there also at this point. So what are we supposed to do? Where are we supposed to go? We can't walk. They don't plow their driveways or their sidewalks. They're not good neighbors. They're not good neighbors now. And can we expect in 5 years that they're going to be here? No, they're not going to be here, but we will be if we can afford to still stay here. So please consider that we are people who live here and these people do not. They don't care for us. And it's just, as I said, a monument to greed. Thank you.
Thank you. Who do we have on?
I have Michelle Velez, followed by Dylan Collins.
Ms. Velez?
Hi, thank you. Michelle Velez. I live here in Fairfield, 172 Warsaw Street. I'm a homeowner and I'm a taxpayer. I've lived here for nearly 20 years. Our town growth requires housing. We can't pretend that our population isn't growing. It requires a tax base and it requires revenue. I think we have extremely high housing costs. So we need to be mindful that we have teachers, we have first responders. I think this development will give us a lot of opportunity for housing for people to continue to live in this town. So I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. I forget who was next. Sorry.
Dylan Collins.
Collins, thank you. Mr. Collins?
I want to thank the committee for the chance to speak, never knowing this time involved on your side of the calendar. I have the ability to be brief, organized, and stay on topic. So I'll say, having lived and worked in Fairfield and seen many periods of development growth, I understand some of the concerns voiced last week. However, I must share how important I think this project is to the continued development of the Fairfield community. Years before this iteration of the Circle Inn that came under Ed Gormley's leadership, I remember countless conversations about the need for viable hotel space. Today, as prior residents raised in town return home for reunions with their families, this space is essential to the connection and possible return of those who have called and may again call Fairfield home. 17 years ago, when I worked in the alumni office of an educational institution in town, it was incomprehensible for those returning for reunions to understand that Fairfield had virtually no hotel options. Fairfield is far more than a stop along 95. And I'm glad the Circle Inn sees that investment as such, and that's why I so strongly support it. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have Robert Steskowski, followed by Rob Gershino.
Mr. Steskowski?
Stokowski. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Again, my name is Robert Stokowski. I'm the owner of 2 properties on Kings Highway and also on Hibiscus Street. And as a taxpayer, I definitely want to advocate for our community, which includes all the residents, all current and future businesses, and lastly, myself as a property owner. The 3 reasons why I support this vision. The first is an upgrade to the existing property, which will provide upwards of $2 million of tax revenue to the town. This revenue will find its way to all residents by way of enhanced services and improved schools. Secondly, the town of Fairfield has spent countless hours and resources on their own plans with the POCD study and the implementation of projects currently within the TOD. These studies have incorporated input and feedback from the residents and the business community. By not moving forward with this project, we'll have demonstrated as a community that these efforts were a waste of time, resources, and the town of Fairfield is not willing to advance forward. Lastly and thirdly, it's a gorgeous project. This project is incorporating the look we all want as a community. It will provide 30 affordable units as defined by the Fairfield Housing Authority's guidelines. This will also provide housing for our police officers, fire people, first responders, teachers, and the nurses who will assist our aging population that is looking to downsize. Also, the project will increase the workforce in the town by a minimum of at least 25 employees. So in summary, I support this project for 3 reasons. The first, again, increase in tax revenue. The second, it's aligned with the plans, with what the town has identified as priorities via the POCD. Lastly, it's been designed to be inclusive for all economic backgrounds. I'd like to thank the commission for allowing my voice to be heard, and also thank you for your service, as no good deed goes unpunished.
Mr. Staskowski, I forgot to ask for your address, please.
859 Kings Highway East.
Thank you. Mr. Persino?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, just your
Hi.
address as well, please.
Yep. My name is Rob Persino. I live at 231 Henderson Road. I'm a fairly new resident of Fairfield, bought my home here in 2021. I'll be starting a family here in a few months, and my wife and I will welcome our first child. Speaking tonight in support of the proposed project. I think this and similar projects are exactly what my family, and I think most new young families here in Fairfield, are looking to see in our town for a lot of reasons. But just to highlight a few, it looks to me like the project's been beautifully and thoughtfully designed in a very modern New England style that I think fits in very well in Fairfield. The development will also generate a sizable increase in the town's tax revenue. I believe all residents would or should welcome that. And also the functionality of the existing driveway does cause some traffic safety issues, which it seems like the development team has spent a lot of time thinking through and addressing in their site plan. Look forward to following the project as it progresses forward, and I'm very confident the sponsorship will deliver an amazing final product. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
We have Ray Mehta, followed by Doug Trainer.
Mr. Maida?
Hi, I'm Raj Mehta. I live on 160 Evelyn Street. As a resident and business owner in Fairfield, I would like to express my strong support for the proposed development of the Circle Hotel. I believe this hotel will enhance the area as well as provide an additional high-quality asset for Fairfield. The property tax revenue increase for the town is also a significant benefit, in my opinion. Thank you very much for your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Trainer?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. My name's Doug Trainer. I live at 160 Judson Road. I've been a resident of the beach area for 30 years. I'm also the CEO of a real estate bank, and my job is to finance projects like this. I've done it for 35 years. Firstly, I can speak to the character of Ed Gormley and his team. And I really appreciate their efforts, and they've put forward beautiful plans and a project that I think will enhance our town. You know, a lot of discussion on traffic, environmental zoning. I think those issues can all be addressed because you have a thoughtful, experienced developer. With that said, I think the project will beautify the area, replace a tired old building, create jobs, and most notably enhance the tax revenue of the town, which we desperately need. So I am speaking out in support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Then we have Sophie Amiak, followed by Marnie White.
White. Ms. Amiak?
Thank you. Sophie Amiak. I live at 208 Shoreham Village Drive, so I am a resident of the very next neighborhood of this development that is in place right now. And I want to thank, first of all of you for being so adamant and so working so hard to help the future of obviously Fairfield and the community. It is a tough task that you have ahead of you in finding out how this is going to be developed. But I think that what I've heard in the last probably 10 or 15 comments are dehumanizing the aspect of this project. I think there are people who are going to be very hurt. And I am not a next door neighbor because I know 3 or 4 people who have their house right there who probably will not see the sun anymore. And I think that people who live in the area in Fairfield need to remember that they might be Fairfield resident and they might look at an idea of a beautiful project but they don't really look at the personal and the human personal of people who are going to lose really their house in the sense of being their house. The other thing that I want to look at is everybody's saying how beautiful this project is, but then we have a diner that, in my opinion, looks awful as far as the aesthetic of it, that hasn't been talked about to be really changed and upgraded to the look of this project. I am not opposed to the project. I'm opposed to the extent of the project. I think that the units needs to be lowered, as well as the amount of the hotel rooms. I think that we're looking at another aspect of having money for the resident, for the taxpayers to bring money and to have money into the Fairfield community. I don't think that's the right approach. I think we all need to look more of the human sense of what this project can create as well. That is another aspect that is much more important than money will ever be. Thank you again for all your effort and your work into this matter.
Thank you.
White?
Mr. White?
Thanks very much. Do you hear me? Great. Hi, thank you. I live on Shoreham Village Drive, 29 Shoreham Village Drive, and before that I lived on Shoreham Terrace. I just returned from a business trip in Orlando, and I rented there an apartment in a very large resort development. It's a huge apartment building. It's called the District Universal Apartment Building, and it's a little bit smaller in size as the proposed building. It also has a wraparound parking garage, so it's quite relevant. It's enormous, it's beautiful, but it works. And the reason it works is that it has the infrastructure to handle it. It is on an 8-lane thoroughfare. It has a feeder road fully surrounding it, and it has stoplights at every entrance. The stoplights take about 3 minutes each, simply to accommodate the traffic going in and out of the building. Also of note, there are no single home residences in the vicinity. So please do look up that District Universal Apartment Complex. I'll follow up with an email. It's in Orlando. Look at the photos and see whether a development of that size makes sense at 441 Post Road. And the next issue that I would really implore the commission to consider is that the developers have been somewhat dishonest and I would say uncooperative throughout this process, which calls the question of just how good this development will be for the community into question. For example, they have said repeatedly that they intend to market to retirees and young families, yet there are no green spaces nor playgrounds. Meanwhile, they've told local businesses, the businesses that I frequent quite often since I'm in the neighborhood, and when trying to garner their support, they told them that this would be primarily student housing. Now, of course, that's their choice, but why would they tell the neighbors one thing unless they suspect that we don't want to host the next SantaCon? They've also claimed that they have a significant amount of community support, but if you carefully read or listen to these so-called letters of support, the letter writers are primarily calling for renovations to the hotel. Very few of them mentioned supporting this mammoth apartment complex. They also claim they commissioned a traffic study. Traffic patterns were done in 2020 during the shutdown. The list goes on and on. Also pay attention to what they've said about the lighting. They said that they would turn down the lights, kind of waving off the commission's questions about this. But I would just want to remind everyone that they would certainly need to keep the rooftop lights on very brightly for safety code reasons. Those lights will cast a great deal of light into the surrounding areas. And yet just a few weeks ago in this meeting, they said that all lights would be off at night. There's no way. Anyway, this feels like a bait and switch campaign of telling the neighbors and residents and townspeople what they want to hear in terms of tax benefits and good for the community, but they're really not making good on any of their promises. And finally, they say that they're here to work with the community, but every request that the neighbors have requested or, asked them to consider has been dismissed. They seem to have one goal only, and it's not to improve the well-being of this community. Thanks so much. I hope you don't fall for it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Diane Malone.
Hi, my name's Diane Malone. I'm testifying on behalf of my in-laws who own 120 Shoreham Village and Drive, which is a property right adjacent to this proposal. And they're concerned about the blasting and its effect on the floodplain and the coastal area. And as the previous woman just mentioned, all the community support, we just heard. And we have no objection to the hotel and improvements to the hotel. It's just the number of apartments and the height of the building is concerning. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone that wishes to be heard in this application? If you're joining by phone, please press *6 to unmute yourself. Any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard in this application?
Yes, I'd like to speak.
There we go. Go right ahead. You can just give your name and address, please.
Hi, I'm Kate Meyer and I live at 167 Churchill Road. I'm speaking in the presence of someone who has lived on, I grew up on Shoreham Village Drive. And many years ago, the neighborhood fought a developer who wanted to come in. And if I remember correctly, it was a Best Buy was trying to get into that neighborhood. And it was hard fought and they won. And I do hope the neighborhood and the town of Fairfield are able to come to an agreement on this development because it is too big. The blasting necessary for this development is really, it's just too much for this neighborhood because I do know one of the homes over there because I sold it to her, the one that referred to the property as some of the complexes as being a prison. I sold Peggy that house and it is built on a rock. So, and it's really just, you throw a rock and you're at the motor end or the circle end. So I'm speaking in against this development. I would prefer the developer to come back with something that's smaller and more comparable to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chat? Any member of the public joining us remotely or by phone wish to be heard in this application? Turning back to the room. I know you do. Anybody else, just out of curiosity?
Can I quickly speak?
Go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Jim Cohen, 54 Attorney Road. Around the corner from the development, and yeah, I'm concerned about the blasting as well, right? I mean, I grew up in a flood zone, and one of the things we learned is don't ever blow up or mess with your high ground. And that's a space that we'd go to in the big storms. That's where we park our cars. It's a safety spot for us. So I'm really concerned about the blowing it out, the knocking it down and making it level. Also concerned about the size of it. So I'm against this. I'm for the hotel, but I'm against the size of it all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like we have other people who unmuted themselves, Mel and Herb.
Hi.
Go right ahead, Mel. If you can just give your name and address, please.
Sure. I'm Melanie Ross. I live at 796 Riverside Drive. I live very close to the circle. And I just wanted to talk again about the urgency about the safety of all those cars coming out from that hotel and that development, if it's going to be that size. I drive every day between 5 and 6 o'clock. And I experienced a road rage incident where someone didn't understand the merging into the circle and they blocked me. I had to stop and they threw a bottle at my car. It was very scary. My mother was in the front seat, my son was in the car. So I just wanted developers to understand the seriousness of what it's like when people are driving in that area during rush hour. There's a serious amount of road rage that's happened. I actually called the police for that incident, and I hope that they are aware that was just like 5 cars coming out today and we all had to wait. If we have this large development coming out, people are not going to be patient, and it's very unsafe, especially when my teenage daughter is driving. I'm driving. We all go to Stop and Shop. That is a serious, serious area. We live in that area, and I hope that they are really, really mindful of what that large development can do, and it's, you know, people can lose their lives driving in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Herb? H, Herb or Herb?
Looks like Patrice Klein unmuted yourself.
Yeah, Patrice Klein, 73 Alden Street. And
Go ahead.
I'm against the developer based on the overdevelopment of Fairfield and developers coming in under the 830G statute, which allows so many exceptions to our rules that keep our town a town, and our infrastructure cannot handle what's happening, period. And I'm opposed to developers, you know, saying it's affordable housing and address the homeless. I want affordable housing. I sit on the Sullivan McKinley board, McKinney housing. I've always been for housing for those in need and homeless, but this 830G, which allows developers to come in and overdevelop the community and not address the issues of infrastructure and maintaining our town as a town is just, it's out of hand and out of control.
Thank you. So it was earlier when you said Herb, it was that one previously?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anybody. Anybody else joining us remotely or by phone, which we heard in this application? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I respectfully offer a comment, and my apologies? I had 2 people who spoke previously in favor and wanted to come back tonight. I told them to submit for it. Commission can do whatever they think's proper. I don't mean to be discourteous, but the speaker has spoken, and
I get it. Let's just go through it quickly. Ma'am, like I said, I see,
Double space.
I know, but that's gonna be longer than a minute or so. Is there any way we can be submitted?
No.
Well,
I'll
could
send
be.
it to you.
It could be. I mean, that's why I would prefer is if it was submitted and we could read it. So we can just,
Can she summarize it? I'd like to hear something.
I'd like to say,
if you be quick, please.
to say it for everybody's benefit. My name is Donna Curran, representing Ash Creek Conservation Association. I'll reduce this as much as I can. Thank you for the ongoing diligence and research to the merits or demerits of the 411 Post Road application. Appreciate that you understand the permanent threat this development poses to our tidal estuary and the expenditure of time and attention to test this application is no small zoning matter. I want to try to summarize. Ash Creek is in agreement with Mr. Logan from Fremont that we need to have greater setbacks than what the applicant has already proposed. Ash Creek would like to see 100-foot setback measured from the shoreline. Mr. Logan is suggesting 50-foot buffer from the wetlands starting at the top of the slope. Both those recommendations, suggestions exceed what the applicant has put forward. I'd like to, at this minute, the town of Fairfield is investing $5.5 million in reconstruct the tidal gates of Ash Creek and Riverside Drive. At the same time, Connecticut DEP is spending $600,000 on a phase 1 restoration planning project at the mouth of Ash Creek that Ash Creek Conservation Association is coordinating. We're expecting another $400,000 to come in phase 2. So I'm questioning why on what the tidal gates will do. The tidal gates will increase the salinity of Ash Creek, and increased salinity supports more diverse, rich wildlife and defeats approaching Phragmites, the seagrass, which can dry out and become a major fire hazard, as we literally saw recently from our shores of the Pine Barrens. The applicant's proposal increases impervious surfaces and intensifies vehicular traffic, and therefore increases runoff and untreated contaminants flowing into Ash Creek. The applicant is working at cross purposes with both the town, Litchfield, and Connecticut DEP for significant investment. It doesn't make sense. We need some coordination, and to Mr. Presiglio's suggestion, maybe there needs some independent government to be done. I looked at all these reports and papers I had over there, and it was interesting to me that one was speaking about the hammer court, stormwater treatment, proper setback within floodplain buffer, planting, screening, lights, noise, glare treated windows. The recurring words used in these reports were inadequate, insufficient, non-existent, missing, promised but not delivered. So this is supposed to be a first-class development, but these are not first-class state-of-the-art submissions. And I think the submissions are incomplete. I don't know how you can make a decision based on the missing information and the conflicting information. I don't think the applicant has done sufficient due diligence to prove a project of this mass and density on the edge of a resource so precious and irreplaceable, and I think it should be denied. And thank you for these things. Thank you.
Have you, gentlemen, have you spoken before?
No.
No. Sir, have you spoken before? In the back, did you have your hand up a second ago? Just name and address, please. Yeah.
233 Collins Street. Lived in town for about 22 years. I was on the Fairfield Shellfish Commission for 5 years. Raised a family. I'm a scoutmaster in town, and I just showed up here tonight to kind of learn more about how the town is progressing and how we're headed for our future. And the limited amount of knowledge that I've learned here tonight is pretty blatant that the applicant does not really care about the town or the forward thinking here. Just the details I've heard about the planning, parking spots, the concern for neighboring, just even the traffic itself. I've almost gotten hit by a car twice in that intersection. I walk around town quite a bit, going to Ash Creek, and I strongly oppose.
Thank you. Any other member of the public wish to be heard? Good evening.
Good evening, how are you doing? My name is Bill Bauer, I live at 299 Riverside Drive. So when I walk down Riverside Drive, I can look up one direction, I can just barely see the top of the current buildings that there. The motel and that, and that's okay with me. I think that if there, that's a two-story building. I think if it were a 5-story building plus more on the roof, it would really be sticking up there. I couldn't help but see it, and it would be something wrong. And I'm not looking forward to that. I think a smaller, more modest development, more in keeping with the style, New England modern with higher quality construction materials would be much more appropriate. I was here a couple weeks ago, and I also saw the traffic presentation, which I thought was deficient. One of the things that the person said was that currently there are 3 driveways coming out, the diner, the hotel, and the other part of the residence there. And they said that would be eliminated down to just 2 driveways. So it seems to me if you've got some traffic problem when people have 3 driveways to drive out, if you're gonna limit it down to just 2, then it's gonna back up more, especially if you have many, many more cars in there. And the number of cars that he estimated would be going out didn't seem to accord with the number of parking spaces that were being provided in the building. So I thought that was a problem, and I wondered, well, how would I face it if I lived there? And I think people will just vote by driving where they find it easier. If you want to make a right turn, okay, you can go out and go right. There'll be some delay. If you want to make a left turn, you're gonna go right down through where all the parking is for the diner. And you'll go down there and you'll pop out on Old Post Road, then you come screaming into the circle there from that angle. And that will introduce a new flow problem until that gets improved. And I guess the third thing is wildlife. Because I live on Riverside Drive, once we had to rebuild the retaining wall behind our house, it took us 3 years to get permits from the state, Long Island Sound Commission, and many commissions here in the town of Fairfield to rebuild the retaining wall that had fallen down. And we had to do it 75 feet away from our house. So, I'm just wondering if all of that, care from state commissions, Long Island Sound, many commissions here in town is also being put to make sure that this development, should it be approved, meets, the needs of the town in that way. So if you're going to approve it, definitely smaller in scale with a better traffic plan and better understanding of the environment and how that works. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Final call in person or remote by phone. Any member of the public wish to be heard?
I live there and I see it. So
So I'll close the public comment portion of this hearing. Turn to the applicant for rebuttal.
Thank you.
Good evening.
For the record, John Fallon, representing the applicant. What I'm going to do tonight, hopefully we close the hearing for.
Well, my plan is, while we have 10 o'clock as our curfew, my plan, I think, is to stay. Because I think we need to stay.
I think
Finish
not
this
having-
register one. Makes the most sense.
Within the curfew.
Yeah,
Let
that
me
would be ideal.
Let me start off by saying how much I deeply, on behalf of my clients, appreciate you, ladies and gentlemen, appreciate. I don't want to go to Lily, but it's extraordinary what you've been doing since January under these circumstances.
September.
And the time that you take and the diligence you take to do this. This will not be forgotten in these things. So.
To be fair, September,
Huh?
back to September.
Yeah, actually, you're right. I said January, but it is. So again, our heartfelt thanks and we appreciate that very much. Not to start with a negative, but a little disappointed with Brother Green, with my colleague, usual friend.
Learned brother is the term, right?
We did both come to the hearings and submitted a great deal of written material relative to this application. And at the hearing last week, there was a discussion and I thought an agreement that any additional written material would be submitted to the commission by close of business on Monday. We did that. We actually did it with all but one report by noon because we wanted to give you an opportunity to review the material as much as you had a chance in advance. So I was disappointed to receive at 4:46 and 5:16 the documents that were handed to you as well. I don't think that's particularly respectful of the commission or the process, but we move on. What I will do tonight, however, in an effort so we can get this closed, is we do have submitted as of yesterday our rebuttal to Mr. Green's rebuttal. Mr. Green then rebutted our rebuttal, so now we get these documents at 46 and 5:15. But when you look through them, there's nothing new here. I mean, we're cutting through more wheat and less, or more chaff and less wheat. So here's what we're gonna do, if it's okay. I'm gonna call on certain of my consultants who are going to give a 5-minute overview rebuttal of the material Mr. Green submitted today. That'll take us, by my math, about 15 minutes. And then I'm gonna close. And I'm gonna cover everything that we need to cover, that I hope we need to cover. And if I don't, you're gonna tell me what I didn't cover, okay? So why don't we start, first of all, I have online Neil Olinsky of SNL. Are you there, Neil?
Yes, speaking.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Neil, you've had a brief opportunity to review the barbarous additional submission that was submitted this afternoon at about 4:36, correct?
Yes, I've given it a quick look.
Okay, and you also submitted an addendum to your report that we submitted to the commission yesterday, correct?
Correct.
All right, with specific reference to the latest document submitted by Mr. Barbaras, could you offer any comments that you think are relevant to his latest comments with regard to the traffic issues?
Sure thing, sure thing. So to start, for the record, Neil Olinsky with SLR. So I'll try to keep this brief. Given Mr. Barbaras's latest letter, quick look. His first comment deals with talks about OSTA. We generally agree. I mean, OSTA may in fact condition improvements, roadway improvements. That would be specifically the responsibility of this development, particularly on the state roads. I think we're in agreement there, and we'll see how that plays out. Quite frankly, the OSTA process is secondary to the town planning zoning approval process. The second second point from Mr. Barbaras talks about level service F. As we stated in our other response, written response, I think that was submitted yesterday. It's kind of hard to explain, but calculated traffic model levels of service, particularly when you get to levels of service F, can be somewhat overstated in real world conditions. As you've heard actually from one of the commenters just a few moments ago, real world conditions will often offset those calculated high levels of service F, high delays. We're talking about the fact that the site has a second driveway. So some motorists they'll decide not to take a left if the delay is longer than they like, and they will just take a right out to Old Post Road. So that will offset some of the calculated delays we had in our initial traffic study. We also don't necessarily disagree with prohibiting left out if that is out to Post Road, if CONDOT requires it, being that it's a state road. So we'll see how that plays out with OSTA approval process. Number 3, I think, touches on that same point. We're not opposed to the no left out to Post Road if that is ultimately required. Number 4 talks about the parking. Mr. Barbaras talks about the parking. We looked at the very latest statistics and data that are published in the ITE's parking generation manual. And those stats just quite simply indicate that a suburban type of development in this type of area, not even that close to a railroad station, will have lower parking demands than what the parking ratio supply is that we're providing. So for example, if I can look at my prior letter, the ITE indicates that 1-bedroom units in multifamily housing have a parking demand of just under 1 parked vehicle per unit, and 2+ bedroom units were averaging 1.23 parked vehicles per unit. That's less than the total supply. I think about 1.5 or 1.45 that's required. So we should be just fine there. And the hotel park demands typically are also less than 1 parked vehicle per room. And not to mention the fact that there will be some compatibility between hotel guests and residents on the site who will not need to park at the diner because they're already there. They're just going to walk the short distance within the site to go there. So that will further reduce the parking demands. And I think one last, number 5 was dealing with poor levels of service and driver frustration. Oh, yes. So level of service, to be quite frank, is not the same as traffic safety. They're 2 different things. Driver delay, traffic delay is what level of service is based on. Traffic safety is a different matter. It should not really be conflated. And the fact that if a driver is impatient and makes an unsafe movement out of a driveway, that is not a design issue. It's not really a design safety issue. And there's another point to make too, is that when we were talking about level of service after one peak hour really in the morning. This is not an all-day condition. When you look at the fact that over the course of the whole day, that level of service is likely to operate fine. That's a point to make as well. And the fact that the traffic engineering community's historic over-reliance on looking at levels of service and trying to get rid of all levels of service F has had unintended consequences. It's quite frankly, it's led to over-designing many roadways. And when you over-design roadways and infrastructure with more lane capacity than is needed during the majority of the day, more lane capacity during off-peak times can actually lead to unsafe conditions because you'll end up with more speeding for the majority of the day, which is opposite of what everybody wants, because higher speeding is a safety concern. And I think that's it. So I don't want to take up any more time, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there's anything further.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Randolph.
Two clarification questions. So, I'll ask my two questions. You can answer. They're two different questions. We can answer them together. So, one on the OSTA process. If you could just walk through that and describe what that is for my information and the audiences, what they're going to be looking at and what's going to be required in order to get final approval. Second, you made a comment on over design and speeding. My concerns other than this committee is bike and ped safety committee, safety of the town, which is right now horrendous. So by reducing the speed and increased queuing, will that increase safety? And I guess I got a third question about the parking ratio of 1.45. If you could just confirm that number, because we're looking at it as a commission, and just if you could just comment or elaborate on the 1.45 per thing. So OSTA, slower speeds, safety, and then 1.45.
The OSTA, we start with the OSTA process.
Sure. So the OSTA stands for the Office of State Traffic Administration. They are an office within the Connecticut DOT. Their purview is really looking at number of things, but in this regard, it's looking at developments over a certain size require the OSTA office to review them. And they look at whether or not a specific development will trigger the need for infrastructure improvements to state roadways. So they're going to give our traffic study, which will be submitted to them shortly. They're going to give all of our traffic study a very detailed technical review, and they're going to see if they're going to require improvements that are specifically going to be the responsibility of this development. So for example, they're going to look at whether or not a signal is actually warranted. Our initial finding is it's not at the post road driveway, but they're going to look at all that kind of stuff. And one of their things that they do, one of the requirements too, is they have to look at these applications. They can look at them somewhat in parallel to the town approval process, but they cannot approve on their end until the town planning and zoning process is fully completed first. So that always comes up, but that's a point to note.
And then could you address the commissioner's question with regard to the relationship, decreasing speed, safety, that question?
Sure, I'll do my best. So I'm not quite sure the exact question, but I mean, in general, when we want speeds to be slower, because the higher the speed, the more severe a crash is when it does occur. So in general, we want, particularly in neighborhoods and built up areas, we want to keep speeding to a minimum and keep vehicle speeds appropriate. I don't know if they answered the question, but
That Commissioner answered.
You're all set. Okay.
And then the last question was just further comment on the parking ratio of 1.45 and where that comes from and the efficacy of that?
So the 1.45 is the number of parking, if I'm not mistaken, it's the number of parking spaces that are gonna be provided for the residential component on the site. That's not to that's the number of parking spaces. That's not to be confused with what we're estimating for the parking demand, which is gonna be less than that 1.45. And that's estimated based on the ITE data I just mentioned.
That's satisfactory. All right, thank you, Ms. Olinsky.
Thank you.
If there's no further questions, Mr. Olinsky,
I think we're good.
I would call on Mr. Rob Pryor, bring the chair right up here, principal at Land Tech. As you know, we submitted originally data about the project. Land Tech is our site engineer and our environmental consultants. In addition, we did submit, Land Tech submitted yesterday a letter which you have. We submitted it at noon yesterday with regard to responses to Mr. Trinkus's original letter of March 4, 2025. We were faced with a further letter from Mr. Trinkus and his testimony tonight. The letter, as I said, at about 4:46. But Mr. Rob Pryor is here from Land Tech. Venus is away, but Rob's going to offer a few brief comments responding to the document, the material and the comment made by Mr. Trinkus.
So thank you. Good evening. My name is Robert Pryor, professional engineer, land surveyor at Land Tech. Like Mr. Trinkus, I lived in this for almost 40 years. John mentioned Andy Sulitas. I met Andy when he was a intern out of college. I trained him when he was certainly first came to Land Tech. So I just wanted to talk about the stormwater management system very quickly and just address some of the comments that Mr. Trinkhouse had made this evening. So the way this system works, both proposed underground detention systems are designed to go the same way. They're designed to fill up completely and then overflow out. When they are completely filled, they overflow out to the level spreader and then discharge out towards the onset well. So in order for that to work, in order for the system to be completely filled, where would the outlet pipe have to be relative to the system? It would have to be either at or above the top of the system. Otherwise, the system wouldn't completely fill up. Very similar, bathtub overflow at home, right? You want, the bathtub overflow at home is set below the top of the tub, so when the drains plugged up, it doesn't overflow on the floor. We want the system to fill over to the top. We need the outlet to the at or above the top of the system. That's where it is. That's what Steve said it was. The argument was it's what he said is the way it's intended to work. It couldn't work otherwise. The system is designed to completely capture and retain the water quality volume that's specified in the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. And we make sure we do that is that we have all that volume is below that outlet. There's no way for not to capture the entire stormwater quality volume, or what's also called the required recharge volume. So there's several places in Mr. Trinkus's comments where he says there's no treatment provided or inadequate treatment provided. What I'm here to tell you is that the treatment we provide is fully compliant with the guidance provided by the Connecticut Stormwater. Also been reviewed by your town engineering staff. I'm just going to read you two excerpts from the. There was some discussion about whether or not we were doing adequate removal based on our design. Two excerpts from the stormwater. One, page 38. Quote, containing the required retention volume on site achieves compliance with standard 1, runoff volume and pollutant reduction. So that says that if you retain that volume on site, which we're doing,
You've met the standard. Period. All the talk about inverts, all this other stuff, smoke and mirrors, we are completely compliant with the standard. Page of the manual states, quote, proposed stormwater management system meets or exceeds these average annual pollutant load reductions when the required retention volume is retained on site using suitable stormwater retention practices. Review the figure 8.1. Go to figure 8.1. You'll see that underground detention system is an approved practice pollutant removal. There's no question we're meeting the standards of the stormwater quality act. The other discussion was about something about infiltration rates and permeability and soil types and silty loams versus sandy loams. What you should understand is that we don't take credit for infiltration during the storm event. We assume there's no infiltration when the storm event's happening. The only time infiltration comes into play from the calculation standpoint is how long it takes for the system to drain out afterwards. Really, there's a guidance in the manual for 48 hours. We'd like to see the system, they would like to see the system drain out in 48 hours. It's not particularly important one way or another, as long as it drains out before the next storm event. And the reason, and it's especially not as important to the underground system. The timing for draining down of a system is more relative to surface systems because there's concerns about mosquito breeding, West Nile, all this kind of stuff could happen when you have standing water for any length of time. You're not gonna have that situation with an underground system. So I think that was really about it. I don't think there was, there's a lot of talk, and I want to say, I gave Mr. Brinkhouse the benefit of the doubt, but this is what the there's only one other.
Yeah, that's fine. We're not going on that route. Can I have those, just because I know the excerpts are part of a public document, but can we put those in the record? Just.
Yeah, we have another one here. Thank you.
Sorry, any questions?
Also, thank you, Rob. Also, we did submit, Land Tech did submit a response to REMA's technical environmental review. That was submitted again yesterday at noon, dated March 13, 2025. We did hear Mr. Logan and receive his document at whatever, 5 o'clock this afternoon. We stand by the document. You'll in your due diligence, which you are so adept at, you'll read all this. And you can read what Logan wrote, you can read what we wrote, you can read what then we wrote again, and you can read what Logan wrote. And we're very, very comfortable, very, very confident that you'll find that our response, which was point by point to Mr. Logan's original testimony and written report, is credible and correct. Lastly, we have with us Mr. Joseph Versteeg. If you come forward, he submitted yesterday also, in accordance with the agreement I thought we had, his document with regard to fire analysis. He's also seen the latest FEMA report delivered late this afternoon, but he's prepared to respond to that. In the report that Mr. Versteeg is going to briefly review, that's dated today, March 17th, you'll also find his resume. I really commend that to you without blushing, but you'll see his 20 years of experience in the state fire marshal's office. So do please read his resume. It's not your standard thing. Matter of fact, the last time he was in this room, he was there on behalf of the state teaching a class, which he teaches 5 years, 5 times a year around the state on, of all things, fire equipment access, which you've heard stuff about over the course of these hearings. So
His resume's in the record?
it is. It was attached to the report. And by the way, I didn't give you copies written copy, so I figure you're so burdened with paper, all this has been filed, so it's part of your, so anytime you want to refer in your deliberations or your own thoughts. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Christie.
Commissioner Harris.
Really quickly, just speaking of CVs, is all your experts, do they have CVs in the record?
Yes, I believe they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I saw them, but okay.
Yes, I believe they do.
Thank you.
Mr. Christie.
Good evening. My name is Joe Versteeg. I'm an independent consultant specializing in building and fire code compliance. And I've been retained by the applicant in this matter. You have my 5-page letter dated yesterday. I certainly will not my intent to read it. But I will go over certain items that I think may have been from last week's hearing require some clarification. As far as fire department vehicle access, Mr. Fino talked about the current code and proposed code, and if you don't mind, I'll refer to them as the current code, the requirements that we're dealing with today, and then the IFC, I think that's what was referenced, what's proposed, the International Fire Code. The plans that we have now before you totally comply 100% with the Connecticut Fire Safety Code that's in effect today. Those requirements simply require a fire truck to gain access into the site and be within 50 feet of an exterior door that provides access into the building. From that point, firefighters must be able to walk on foot around the building, either one direction or the other direction, and on a larger building, in 2 firefighters in both directions, converging at a point not more than 400, each having traveled not more than 450 feet. And those are the requirements. And there's peripheral requirements that the road's got to hold up the truck, that's a given, that the turning radius has to accommodate the truck, that's a given, no overhead projections. All of those are compliant. And that's what the fire marshal alluded to in the code minutes, that it's got to provide a 20-foot fire department access road, it's got to hold up the superimposed loads. That's fine, and that's a top blanket statement. Now, on December 3rd, we did a page turning of the plans with the design team and building official and the deputy fire marshal, where it was all reviewed. And we actually added in the back of the building, if you notice where you recall where you went from the paved parking lot around the back of the building on the grass, and you ended up in the far upper left-hand corner. That was added at that meeting at my discretion, at my suggestion, to satisfy the fire marshal to get a truck in the back. It also satisfied our ability to park 2 trucks and then have firefighters walk and meet not more than 450 feet. So that was approved. Now, I reaffirmed that with Deputy Fire Marshal Donati last Friday on a phone call. The position hasn't changed. And although he was coming off the line or going back on the line, no longer going to be in the fire marshal's office, his replacement was going to be briefed on it and there would be no problem. Now, we talk about this new IFC. It does incorporate placement of ladder trucks and specifications. We satisfy those requirements. There's an impression, I think, that was made that the fire truck has to have, the ladder truck has to have access all around the building and to all different points. Code doesn't require that. Code requires that when you get a ladder truck in and to set it up, then you need sufficient for the outriggers to turn down. So wherever we have placed that truck on that site, 3 or 4 different locations, we're totally compliant with the new requirements. Now, the IFC that's being proposed to be the new Connecticut Fire Safety Code, a section has been added to the Connecticut Fire Safety Code that says previously approved fire department vehicle access plans can be continued in use. And that's because we know that things get tied up or get approved in planning and zoning on one set of regs, and by the time we actually pull a building permit, the building code and the fire code have changed and the rules have changed. That allows you to use the prior code. And where the local fire marshals a little unhesitant about doing that, the state fire marshal has the authority as the final authority on state code by statute to grant equivalent compliance using alternative methods like the NFP adoption of the current code. And we've used that a number of times, but there was a 3-year period where the IFC requirements were part of the fire safety code, and it was a nightmare on challenged property sites. So the state fire marshal always stepped in and granted equivalencies. The other thing I bring up is, and I don't mean to bring it up, but it was mentioned, fire department staffing levels, and it was a reference to NFPA 1710. And I just remind everyone that the scope and purpose of this guideline from the National Fire Protection Association is merely to assist fire department command staff and town management in staffing their departments. It is not a mandatory document. It is not adopted by the state of Connecticut. It's simply a benchmarking tool. And in fact, the Fire Prevention Commission that teaches firefighters and fire officers mentions this document in a half-hour training session, simply to introduce it so that it's there and use it for documenting getting your fire department bigger, more staffing, more fire trucks, more fire engines, and probably overtime. That's what it's introduced for by the Fire Commission. So in essence, I've reviewed these plans extensively. I have absolutely no problem with the plan. They're in total compliance with the building of the fire code and the fire prevention code. And do not pose an adverse impact on substantial public interest, nor does it pose any safety concern.
Mr. Preside, one question in the hearing last week, there was a lot of talk about overhead wires. Can you briefly address those comments? I think that's also was in Mr. Bean's report.
Yeah, overhead wires that are between a building and where a ladder truck would park potentially cause problems, depending on whether you have to go directly through them. You don't want the wires contacting the metal part of the fire truck. So in some cases, if it's low, you can go under it. In some cases, if you need to go up high and not go over them and shoot water, then they're not an issue. I guess the problem is, don't have to park a fire truck there. We can pull into the site, gain access around one side, the back side. We're totally compliant.
It would comply.
It would comply
with the regulations.
I guess there's maybe a misconception that the ladder truck has to get to windows because it's an apartment building. Keeping in mind that the building code, the fire code, no windows are required in a sprinkler building. So you can have them sealed shut. That's the faith they put in our automatic sprinkler system and the construction of the compartments within the building.
Thank you.
Questions, Commissioner Randolph?
Mr. Green, go ahead.
I was looking at the IFC that we were given in FairTV. And it appears that in terms of having a second access road, there's generally an exception where it's a fully sprinklered building and you're only required one. Is that correct?
Yeah, this building does have two access roads. Typically, and I think it was portrayed the other day that the access were around the building. It's one driveway into the site. That's all that's required. If for some reason, the site causes heavy traffic congestion in that, traffic coming out. If you've got normal congestion in the area, that's not taken into account. It's site congestion. So if you had, 4,000 workers all leaving at 4 o'clock, that would be a problem on that one site. So you would have a secondary, but we have two access roads here.
Any other questions for Mr. Preside?
Go ahead, Commissioner Randolph.
Some questions were raised by the rebuttal or that the rating of the building, the flammability of the rating was insufficient based upon its wood frame construction over potentially a concrete platform. Could you address that?
Yeah, sure. The building code establishes, not the fire code, but the building code establishes the allowable area, how big in footprint the building can be and how tall it can be based on two factors. One, what's the occupancy within residential, hotel versus commercial. Commercial, you get a little bit bigger footprint, so you get a little bit more height. And then they put limitations on the type of construction. So wood frame construction is certainly within, this building is certainly within the wood frame construction parameters. Now, there will be fire resistant rated components within the stair shafts, the rated corridors. Each unit will be separated by fire rated construction to create compartmentation and access in and out.
And who assures that the flammability of this building meets all the codes?
The building department. Yeah, the building department is required to do a comprehensive building plan review. Any violations are found, they have to be corrected by the design team. Once they are issued a building permit, then inspections are done at specified intervals by the building code. And then individual inspections are signed off on, and when it's finally done, the building issues a certificate of occupancy. So there's checks and balances all the way.
Thank you. Hold on one of the concerns was with the grass pavers, question of whether there was enough structure underneath and impacted properly to handle the weight of a truck.
Right. And that's part of the design team. They get the weight of the truck from the fire department, and then they design how it will hold up.
Okay.
And again, what happens a lot
So
of
it's not
times,
done at this point, it's done at a design stage, it's less done at design stage, but more confirmed at the building.
yeah, it's more conceptual. And a lot of times the building department and the fire marshal can't determine whether the road construction is adequate. So they go to public works because they deal with roads.
Anything else for Mr. Versteeg?
No,
Thank you, Mr. Versteeg.
Thank you.
for your time.
All right, so I'm gonna close. And in doing that, I'm gonna have the help of my team over there, Hammond Fidelli from Brooksy Rosen and Mr. Glenn Vernon, some of you may know. And because they don't trust me verbally here, but we're gonna have slides. The good news about those slides is they've all been downloaded. So again, like the reports, if during your private deliberations or your public deliberations, you want to refer to any of these slides, they will be there. So why don't we begin, Emma? I want to talk first about the architecture. I do that for two reasons. Because when I finish up here, I'm going to come back to talking about this project, what it can mean for Fairfield, what it will mean for Fairfield at this gateway location. And in the one picture being worth 1,000 words, I think these slides, which Emma will run through as I talk, kind of set the premise to get us back to what we, after 4 nights of public hearing, are really doing here. The one thing I want to mention, however, because it has come up and some very, I think, unfair comments have been made. There's no bait and switch here. The only thing that has changed here relative to the dialogue and the interaction that went on during these hearings is the color has been remodified back to show the color that was originally shown and always intended. There is no change whatsoever, any architectural element at all. So what you see is what you always were proposed to get. The only thing that now has been reformed is that the coloration is in fact in place. And indeed, if you look carefully at these particular renderings, you'll see that the window panes that somebody said went missing. Well, they didn't go missing. They were always there. And so this is the building that we proposed, and it's the building we're going to build. And it's what we're going to have on this site for generations to enjoy.
I see what, do I see brick in there though, or what is the, I mean,
No brick.
I think the concern was, and the concern was, the initial conceptual design showed a light color brick of sorts.
Right.
And
Looks
the
like a
designs and the plans that were provided were different.
Seelan Painter has joined me at the table. Seelan has spoke previously, as you know, and I'll let him address the question of, you know, the brick.
Sealing about the Pinefield architecture. The brick you're referring to, the way the confusion about the brick was from hand renderings.
Yes.
It looked like brick. It wasn't the intent for that to be brick. We had a sample, if I zoomed in, you'll see it actually looked like siding. The only change in the hand rendering was the first story of stone cladding. Just one story of stone cladding we brought down. But there's a design choice. If you go back, Emma, these on that building on the left, that's where the comment was that it looked like whitewashed brick in the hand rendering. That was never the intent, except that what did change on this particular element from the hand rendering was that stone base went up 1 story. That was it. So the intent was never brick.
Even there, that what you're saying is that it's not brick what's showing there, that is what, a siding of sorts?
That's a shingle siding, yeah.
Shingle siding, okay.
And that's always been clear on our 2D elevations in the submission from the beginning.
Okay.
Thank you. Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about shade. We have submitted as part of this record and as part of these renderings, a shade study. But let's put that in context. I show you a Google photograph here, which shows the area, and that's offered so that you can see that the single-family residences along Shorehams are heavily treed. Okay, so if disturbance of sunlight is a question, and we have the shade study in a minute, but Emma, if you could just move on to those other slides. These are various homes. They are labeled in terms of their, where they are. But as you can see, this is existing conditions on these homes. And the point that we're making, and I think the shade study emphasizes that as well, and you can go quickly to the shade study. You can study that as you see fit, but we have it, is that these homes are not going to be substantially impacted by loss of sunlight based upon what we are proposing to do here. Taking into consideration, they are already heavily buffered by trees. The other thing, and you can go to the next slide with the 5-foot setback. There was a question. We did agree based upon requests from neighbors early on to impose a 5-foot setback on the upper story. And we did that because we were asked to do it, and we stand by that, and that's part of your application. So we wanted to reaffirm that that was still part of the design. Next slide. We respect the neighbors, all our neighbors, those who oppose us and those who support us. But what this particular graphic shows you is of the roughly 20 to 25 closest neighbors, adjacent and abutting neighbors, only 7 and maybe 8 after tonight, because there was a person, I think, from 120 Shoreham who spoke against it, although I think she said she was speaking on behalf of a family member. We had spoken, we think, to the family member who wasn't opposed. But the point is, those are the people of the 25 closest residents who are actually opposing this application. We've done extensive outreach, Mr. Bornley, door to door to door, and more than once or twice, developing conversations with the neighbors. Not all neighbors are favorable or pleased, but many are, and are at least not opposing it because they choose to remain silent rather than oppose their neighbors. And let me digress for 1 second here, because I think some other very unfair comments have been made. Ed Gormley's roots are in Fairfield. He's a graduate of Fairfield Prep. He has been in this community for over 40 years. Spinnaker Real Estate and its memberships, they all live in Fairfield. So these aspersions with regard to, out of town developers and, they won't be here in 5 years. They've been here for 40 years. They've been here longer than a lot of the people who spoke in these proceedings. But I just thought it was interesting to point out that when you take all of your letters, all of your petitions, we have basically 7 people out of that total who are opposing the application. We spent a lot of time talking about streetscape, sidewalk, landscape improvements, and we have slides that kind of put that in context. We've submitted a comprehensive landscaping plan, which you've seen. This benefit here to the public pedestrian experience is going to be extreme. We're proposing construction of a new concrete public sidewalk and snow shelf to the town of Fairfield standards. We're proposing appropriate pedestrian lighting. There'll be a continuous walk from one end of the project site to the other that is separated from traffic lanes by the addition of the snow shelf. This is all on the, so I'll try to summarize it, but again, street trees every 60 feet. And we asked you to compare all that with regard to what the existing landscaping is on the site, where there is a very generous sized lawn, but there's very little landscaping to speak of. In terms of trees, because I know that is important to the commission, the robust landscaping plan that I referred to, we're listing over 280 trees and 430 shrubs and many hundreds more perennial grasses. And indeed, Earl Govan submitted, and we filed that yesterday, a detailed planting sheet with regard to that. We are eliminating one of the existing site curb cuts, which again, in terms of the goals of the complete street and safer goals for access, is I think a very good thing. So those are all summarized, but we're very proud of what we've done in terms of the landscaping. There's been questions with regard to noise and light pollution. Again, I won't read this slide to you, but just to highlight it, we obviously did do a photometrics analysis. All the lighting we're proposing is low-level bollard-style lighting. And the proposed development calls for the vast majority of the site parking, which is now currently all above ground, to be relocated to the underground garage wrapped with the housing units. So that's going to eliminate a lot of light and noise relative to parking of vehicles. There was the question with regard to the tree inventory. There's a slide on that. The bottom line is this: 198 trees are being proposed, as opposed to 27 that are being removed. If you do it on a caliber basis, there'll be 478 inches, if you will, of new trees, replacing 473 of the old. So we are very proud of that. And again, I ask you to look at the landscaping in terms of existing conditions, where there is, whether you live on Shoreham or whatever, there's presently a clear and unobstructed view of what is there now, which for my case is not very sightly whatsoever. And this new landscaping, will buffer that, and I think will have a positive impact. And I'll talk more about the special permit standards as I close, but we have that. There's a slide next called size of the project. A few conceptual points here after 4 nights of hearing a lot of stuff, which I'm sure was some of it well-intended, but just inaccurate. The top of the proposed parking deck, which is the tallest story of the development, will actually be roughly the same height of the existing upper hotel building that is there now, okay? We are able to make the new apartment building more stories primarily by undertaking a very costly excavation, which we elected to do over building up on the existing grade so that we could keep the project in harmony with the neighborhood and not have it dwarf over the neighborhood. So if you want to talk about height and impacts, one of the gentlemen spoke tonight about whatever, the fact of the matter is, I'll repeat it, the top of the proposed parking deck, which is the tallest part of our development, is actually about the same height as the existing upper hotel. And that's because of the grade differences that we're talking about. We looked very carefully at the number of units here. We have reduced it from where we originally planned. We're not greedy developers, we're local developers, but we're trying to come up with a model for development that makes economic sense and is feasible. And that's it. We're not gonna take oodles of cash and run out of town and, move overseas. But to any project like this, especially with significant site costs like we do have, based upon excavation and other factors, there's a tipping point. And this is the tipping point. And we explain that in greater detail in this slide, which you can look at in more detail. But we did meet with the neighbors on numerous occasions. We did, as I said, scale back the upper floors at various locations pursuant to their request. But what we've come up with now is something that does work at a fairly modest return, if you look at this slide. And we hope that you will agree that it's a carefully planned and proper development. Site drainage, all right? You heard from Land Tech, both Rob Pryor and Andy the other night in terms of our responses to Mindy Trinkus's comments. And I'll leave that there. That's already there. And I do agree, as the vice chair said earlier. Talk to your engineering department. They've already reviewed and approved these plans. So they're your resource. I would definitely talk to them. Mr. Trinkus didn't talk to them, or if he talked to them, he certainly didn't garner their support for his conclusions about the efficacy of our drainage plan. Here's a big one, okay? There's a CAM application here, okay? And we've heard from Mr. Green and his consultants, oh, we don't comply with the CAM Act. Well, tell that to the DEP. Your record has, and this is all laid out in this slide. This is language from the DEP comment letter. We commend the applicant for proposing improvements to the stormwater management system. Although this is a waterfront site, due to the steep slopes at the rear of the site, it does not appear suitable for active in-water, water-dependent uses. Sorry about the kayaks, Joe. And we therefore support passive recreational public access to viewing platform as the water-dependent use on site. This isn't us. This is the DEP giving their formal comments to you through your staff. And you can go on, please read this whole thing. I'm trying to move along here, but this is the DEP. So the CAM site plan approval, it seems to me, is a no-brainer. Similarly, we have a slide on the One Nature response. You got a letter from One Nature. Again, I'm not going to read that, but there is in there, and I can't read it with my glasses, and for some reason I don't particularly have this slide, but there is, if I could, maybe I can turn over here. Yeah. Limited to there is discussion there with regard to the lighting. The project will include dark sky compliant lighting to minimize light pollution and will incorporate bird-friendly window glazing to reduce window strikes, meaning bird strikes, in accordance with the best practices outlined by the Audubon Society. And my good friend Mylan was here earlier. I think he left. So you can make that a condition of approval. We're totally in agreement on that. Okay. I think I basically covered it. You can go to the next one there. I'm in drainage and flood prevention. This gets into the whole summary that Land Tech has offered. If you it both addresses the Trinkus comments and the Logan comments, but if you read through all of that and you look at this slide, I mean, we have basically on an executive summary basis talked about how we're going to protect the creek, how we're going to ensure flood protection, and of course, how we're dealing with coastal resources. And if you look at those slides, the one that's up now, and then the one after that, I will talk about the coastal resources protection because I know there's been a lot of comments there, and that's important. There's a proposed 15-foot riparian buffer along Churney Creek that will be planted with native species to enhance water quality and provide habitat for wildlife. In addition to that riparian buffer planned with native species, there will exist a buffer of approximately 55 to 75 feet. The exact footage of which varies considerably from point to point between the proposed buildings and the adjacent tidal wetlands. Currently, there's only a 40-foot buffer. The DEP was aware of this. They commented on it. The DEP recognized the efficacy of the 25 to 50-foot buffer and notes that the optimum width for a tidal wetland buffer depends upon the combination of on-site and adjacent conditions and the desired function of the buffer. Again, the whole question of the sufficiency of the buffer in terms of protection of the coastal resource has been reviewed by the DEP, and they have found it to be appropriate. and that's referenced again on the next slide as well. Blasting, we have that covered by a slide as well. Rock blasting is a controlled process, as you know. It's used to break up rock for the construction and excavation. These developers have extensive experience with that. Safety always is and will be their chief goal and priority. Professional supervision, all blasting is conducted by licensed professionals following strict industry standards. Blast design, each blast is carefully planned while consideration for nearby structures, terrain. Monitoring, blasts are monitored using seismic equipment to measure vibrations and ensure they stay with safe limits. Operations comply with all local, state, and federal regulations. We will also, as you know, be doing pre and post-blast surveys. We'll be advising neighbors if and when blasting is necessary, and if so, when it will take place. It's in our interest, as it is the neighbors, to make sure that we are totally protecting them and protecting ourselves with regard to blasting issues. So we'll employ all of that. The fire marshal is involved in issuing permits for blasting. Blasting occurs all over the town on many, many sites. It's important that it be done safely and in accordance with the regulations, and that's how it will be here. There were some questions with regard to, do we have sufficient sewer capacity? You can read the slide. It has interesting information, but the bottom line is this project has been approved by the WPCA. So there's no question that we have sufficient sewer capacity. Turning to traffic, you have the reports and testimony over the course of these proceedings from Mr. Alinsky. You heard from him tonight in response to the Barris comments, both the original Barris comments and the ones we received this afternoon. So I won't dwell on that. I did put up a slide. We put up a slide with regard to levels of service, which I think it's important that you review. And I do think it's important, you know, we only have one level F, okay? And that involves one single turning movement, that being that left-hand turn out, and that only occurs during the morning peak, okay? So I think for starters, in terms of putting this whole level of service question into context, this project is not a level of service F. It has one turning radius at one driveway during 1 hour of the day where that level of service is F. And even then, the delay that is caused by that particular condition during that 1 hour of the day is contained on site. It's not backing out onto a public street. So we think that is appropriate. We also included a slide. There were questions with regard to the traffic count timing and when we did the counts. Important, as the slide indicates, that the DOT has confirmed that all of the traffic counts in our study are valid. So again, much like the CDP when it comes to the CAM, we include in this slide the correspondence from the DOT confirming the accuracy and appropriateness of our traffic counting. I included a slide with regard to the post road circle improvement that we discussed. But the bottom line is you'll find information in here that talks about where that stands at this particular point in time. And you know, we're gonna continue to work with with conduct with regard to this project. As someone said tonight, it's probably 5 to 10 years out. But we don't want to stop all development in town 5 to 10 years till we wait to see what happens bureaucratically with the circle. What we do want to make sure of is, though, that our proposal, as we put it before you, and we'll have to put it before OSTA if you approve this application, is safe and effective and appropriate. And we feel very, very strongly that that will be the case. And to the extent we have traffic congestion, which is the next slide, again, you start with context, and that is that when you look at our traffic study, we're only having a very, very moderate impact on traffic. It's sort of like what I've referred to before as the drop in the bucket situation. You know, this area of the Post Road, like other areas of town, Black Rock Turnpike, has significant traffic volumes, especially during peak hours. When you look at the overall volume and compare it to the impact, what this site will add to it, it is not very, very extensive. Where there is that one impact, as the slide points out, you know, it's definitely a short-term impact involving one movement, and that involves cars not entering our site, but cars leaving our site, so that any backup that's caused there is not going to affect the public roadway. And the rest of it, I think you can review, and but I think the report speaks for itself, and the slide summarizes that. Fire access, you've heard from Stieg. Again, I commend his testimony to you, and I commend his resume in terms of the credibility. There were some comments with regard to schools. And if you look at the slide that is up now, it talks about and quantifies exactly what we're talking about. And I'm going to take a minute with this because I think it's important. Sherman School, which is where this property is districted, has a capacity of approximately 425 students with about 81 seats available, and flat projections for enrollment over the next 10 years. And you'll see all that data up here. It is one of Fairfield's 3 schools that have no students from high-density housing enrolled. Based upon the February 24 draft Fairfield POCD, your draft CODD, there are only about 0.16 Fairfield Public School students generated per unit in a residential apartment building such as this. Your own data, the town's data, estimates that only approximately 40 K through 12 students would come from this development. So the DEP, we're referring our CAM application to you. The advocacy of our traffic counts, we're saying this is what DOT says. And with the idea of school impacts, we're referring you to your own data, which would show that at its height, we would have a maximum of 40 K through 12 students living there. And we point out on the slide, a recent inventory of multifamily housing in Fairfield shows a student impact of 25% below that POCD approximation across all multifamily properties in the town. And projects of a similar nature to this proposal have a student impact of less than 50% of what's listed in the POCD as a multiplier. Environmental, we've already covered that. You have the reports from Mr. Carey and Land Tech, both the original reports, the response to, I like to work with you. Takes me back.
You're in your speech.
The response to the original Logan material and the response from the Logan material that was received today. We have addressed very carefully the whole question of DEP positive CAM review. We addressed, and it's on your slide here, the next slide up, the distance of our proposal to the creek. We have another slide, 142, that addresses the wetland buffer. I don't want to be, go back, but you can see that for what it is. And again, I think it's relevant. DEP has found it to be appropriate. And we have a slide with regard to public access. Public access is important here. There's no real meaningful public access now. And as the DEP points out, this is an area that benefits or would benefit from public access for passive recreational opportunities. And by creating that pedestrian path, we think that's going to have a very exciting benefit. And we're also going to manage that area very carefully during construction. So that is important. let me say a few words before I move on. There is no plans for a bar or restaurant. The first floor area in question will be used as amenity space for hotel guests only, okay? There is a plan. When we said undetermined, I think the question was, will there be a restaurant and a bar? We said undetermined, okay? What's in front of you tonight is an application where that first floor space will be used for amenity space solely by hotel guests. It might be probably a breakfast area, whatever. And again, you can make that a condition of approval. So what happens if down the road we want to come in and build, have a bar or restaurant? We got to come back here for a special permit. All right, so everybody can be assured there's no secret plan for a restaurant or a bar. And if our plans change, if public interest and or our patrons, our guests would like to see that, well, that's a new application that has to come back to you. And you have to look at that in the context of all your special permit requirements as it relates to parking, traffic, everything else. So I just want to put that behind us. There's no plan for that at all. Affordability, we hear you, okay? We know where this commission wants to be in terms of affordability. And so we're here by committing for purposes of this record and a condition of approval that we would agree that the amendment that's before you should change that 12% to 15%. That is not, and we're not looking for any medals here, okay? But as you can see in the second bullet point, that is a commitment that is made with some significant financial impact. But we are willing to do it. We think it's in line with what the commission is expecting and moving towards in terms of development generally. We would ask respectfully, I know Mr. Levy brought this up, that the amendment could be maintained at 15%, but at 80% AMI, because as you see, the numbers are significant as we increase the affordable. And if a percentage of those units were to be 60%, that would be very, very difficult for us to achieve financial feasibility for the particular project. So a couple of other comments and like we're gonna make it. First of all, Mr. Green very correctly talked about section 25.7. We reach entirely different conclusions with regard to section 25.7. If there was ever a transitional use, a transitional proposal, this is it. We are on the Post Road. We are across the street from McDonald's, and we're down the street from Dutchess, and we're at the famous traffic circle, and we're across the street from Stop and Shop. And immediately to our rear is a lovely neighborhood and the old Post Road. And we've sat there since the 1960s with a hotel and restaurant. Now we want to build a new hotel and we want to build residential housing, an apartment. What's a better transitional use from intense commercial use and single family residential use than what we propose? So we think if you want to look at transitional use, we are very much in keeping with that. If you want to talk about improvements, about protection of property values, we submit for your final consideration that the improvements to the property that we are proposing, the safety improvements that we're proposing by way of the sidewalks and the improvements to the ingress and egress, the landscaping, the public access, etc. All of this, we believe, will have a very positive impact on surrounding residential property. And we think we've addressed the other considerations of 25.7 as well as they relate to traffic, etc., etc. you guys are gonna be able to teach the McLaughlin case, because Mr. Green and I keep citing it to you. We discussed it extensively in, the 2179 Post Road application. I would agree, please make it part of your record here. You all have copies of it, because what it does is it debunks, as I pointed out in the Post Road case, a claim that this is spot zoning. Because it's not spot zoning. If you look at what the Supreme Court says, that as long as this is consistent with the comprehensive plan, then the size of the parcel or its application townwide or not, doesn't really matter. So I guess I end with where I started when I had the pleasure remotely of kicking these 4 nights of hearing off. You have the most important role in the community, and that is planning. And when you plan, you're striving, and this group is, I think, striving to implement a vision for the town's future that balances economic growth, environmental protection, and the need of our community to provide opportunities for additional housing and a consistent, affordable component to that, as well as business development and tax generation. It's a big job. It's a very big job. And what it requires you to do is balance the needs and protections of individual neighborhoods, which are indeed entitled to that, and the needs of the town as a whole, for economic development, for housing, for tax base. So you have to look at everything that we've been talking about tonight. And in achieving that balance, you have to look at everything we're proposing. You have to look at our landscaping. You have to look at our design. You have to look at our environmental commitments. You have to look at the public open space. And if you do that, the benefits here, I think, are extremely significant. You have public access to Ash Creek. You're finding 30 new units of affordable housing. You're creating additional market rate housing that's going to serve a real need for our community, younger people, older people, empty nesters. You're making significant contributions to pedestrian safety enhancement by way of the new sidewalks along the Post Road and the reduction of the curb cuts. You're addressing a major enhancement to water quality and on-site drainage. Remember, and I should have said this, there's nothing on this site now that protects water quality or promotes sound, state-of-the-art drainage. Whatever's happening bad in Turney Creek or the Ash Creek is happening now, and we're going to eliminate that. And of course, you are providing a significant enhancement to the town's tax revenue, as we've discussed before. So when you sit down to do the hard job of balancing your planning function, I hope you will, I know you will, take all of this into consideration. Because this is, in fact, a generational opportunity to take a site that is currently underdeveloped and with the vision of these local developers, reimagine it into a property that will result in a unique and exceptional mixed-use development for our town, a landmark for our town in this very important, what I refer to as a gateway location, that's going to be a catalyst for future economic vitality, housing diversity, pride in our community, and further economic growth. We can't do better than that. And with all due respect, we are not going to create environmental harm. We're going to create environmental benefit. And we are not going to destroy the fine neighborhood of Shoreham Terrace. We're going to ensure that what they see now to no benefit or enjoyment or benefit to their property values is enhanced far more than what they've been living with all these years. So I'm running out of time. I'm probably running out of gas. And I do hope, I've never had a development that I've had the opportunity to bring before you guys over the last 40-some years that I think is a better development for this town. And I think that with careful planning being done and with these local in-town developers see it through, I think it's a great opportunity for us and I hope you'll, but I end with, again, what I started with. Thank you for everything you're doing here for the town on this project and many others. And I would be remiss as a last minute, since I finished a little early, since this is the last time I'm gonna have a chance to say this. I've said it to you perfectly already, but I want to be public. I've never worked with a finer public servant. Yeah, I've never worked with a better planner. I've never worked with a better gentleman, that you know. And so on what, for me, at least, may be his last meeting, I just want to say that.
Final question. Sorry, final questions from Attorney Fallon, Commissioner Levy.
Just point out at 15%, it would be 38 units. That's the math, yep, that's what we would suggest. Thank you.
We just want to submit a copy of our slides for the record to Ms. Keo. We can upload an electronic copy.
Attorney Green
Yeah, the intervener has two questions.
or
I'm not taking, I mean, unless you insist, I'm entitled to my rebuttal. And I'm not entitled, or is it required, that I should be subject to the intervener's cross-examination. I've already bit my tongue a little bit because I think my right to final rebuttal was a little infringed upon by the way things were submitted today. So I'd rather not ask any questions, Mr. Green. I think he had a chance to make his rebuttal case. He could have asked me or anybody else any questions.
Mr. Wentz, help me out, with the procedure here.
Typically, the applicant has the last word.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Who's the last word on an intervention?
He's had his.
Applicant always has the last word. I just don't remember with cross. I mean, are your questions to Attorney Fallon? Hold on.
No, my questions, one is to Attorney Fallon and one is to the engineer.
I object. I think it's always been the tradition of this commission. The applicant is entitled to the last words. My engineer was here all night. I was here all night. If the intervener had a question, he had an opportunity to do that before he rested. We should close this hearing.
I'm an
What-
intervener. I have the right
What's the
to ask
question? Let me
questions.
just, for the record, what are the
We have to
questions?
clarify things now.
I don't know. Just state the questions quickly.
My first question is, Attorney Fallon stated that the town engineer approved the stormwater plan. And I'm not familiar with that, so he can just.
We'll reach out to the town. We'll reach out to the engineer for that, because that's.
Well, he
part of it.
said it's been approved by the town engineer.
That's my understanding, and it would be confirmed by the commission.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be cross-examined by you, so
Well,
you can go.
it
All right,
hasn't.
That's been
but
addressed.
it
What's the
hasn't.
next one?
The second one is a question for the engineer.
What is the question?
It's a question about the galleries and you made a comment about the overflow. And Mr. Trinkus had pointed out that there are 2 6-inch orifices in the system and that the lines are not there that connect to the level spreader. And I just want the engineer to show where those lines are.
Mr. Pryor. It's easier than fighting about it. I mean, it is.
If it's just a matter of identifying it, please, that would be helpful.
Can you do that briefly, Mr. Pryor?
Yeah, that's, I can see the plan.
Which plan do you need to be exhibited?
C 2.0, please.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner.
Commissioner Collins, what's your question? Commissioner Collins? You have a question?
You can zoom in on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, why don't you state your question while we're working this up?
Sure. I just had in the initial presentation with the renderings, the first rendering, it just kind of baffles me how it goes from a siding when it clearly looks like from the rendering that it's a whitewashed brick. And it much more architecturally appealing, similar to maybe some of the whitewashed brick that you'd see in Southport Harbor, for instance, that building that's now a real estate office that's multi-level. It's just much more of a New Englandly feel. I felt that the second rendering was just.
Commissioner Collins, listen, I'm just not hearing a question. I asked that question earlier and they addressed it. They said it wasn't really their intent, so they've answered that question.
So it's not brick that was in the first rendering, it was a wood siding, is that what you're?
Yes.
That's correct, Commissioner Collins.
So, just leave it at that.
There's no doubt it gave the appearance, the hand rendering gave the appearance of brick. But as Mr. Piper said, that was not our intention, and we've been consistently intending to show.
Would you be willing to maybe consider a brick facing, a whitewash?
We had not considered it. The shingle does have a very New England look in our estimation. We think it does fit in with.
Just what's your name for the record, please?
Sorry, Ed Gormley, I'm the applicant. So we think the shingle is the New England.
Okay, that's the answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My question is, note C, as Mr. Prentice pointed out, refers to a 6-inch overflow orifice and refers to the gallery system. Where is the line that runs next at that orifice? Where's the detail on it?
I have no idea where the detail is, and it's actually irrelevant. Questions are relevant to the operations of the system. I clearly explained how the system operates. I appreciate your attempt to subterfuge this.
All right, all right. The answer is.
We're answered.
Attorney Green.
We're answered unless I'm directed to ask.
Hold on. Ask the question.
I asked that question, and now the second.
Well, I thought there was
gallery.
2 questions though. You asked one of Attorney Green and one of.
No, the orifice is for the gallery, and that is the one pertaining to that gallery, and then.
All right, is it the same answer to the second one?
Answer.
Okay.
And if it's something that the commission is concerned about, it's clearly something that could be designated as a condition of approval, especially after consideration of the engineer.
And if Mr. Fallon wants to retract the statement that the engineer approved the storm.
I'm not retracting my
All right,
statement that the
enough.
engineer, to my knowledge, the engineer approved the plans that are before the commission.
We're
That's what I
gonna,
said.
and we're gonna reach out to the engineer directly.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrison. sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So the gentleman who's the fire expert.
Mr.
Yeah, thank you. He spoke about the conversation with the fire marshal Iannetti on Friday.
Yes.
Do you have any kind of notes or a memorandum from that conversation that you can share with the commission?
No, it was a phone call.
It was a phone call, okay. All right, then can we reach out to him on questions?
Yeah,
Okay.
I brought up earlier. So thank you.
All right,
Thank you all.
Final questions? Sorry. All right, I will
Thank you.
close the hearing on this application.
Thank you.
Thank everybody for a very professional and civil discourse.
So, yeah.
No, not even that's what happens. That's fine. Thank you, everyone. Excuse me.
I do.
Excuse me.
Almost finished it for you.